Chapter 1756. Yi Qianqian suddenly remembered something and quickly looked down. Oh, my noodles. As soon as she looked down, Yi Qianqian felt that the person she was describing was very similar to Shinjilia. Loved to smile and looked good when he smiled. Loved to work out and was sunny. Every single description matched perfectly with Shinjilia's. However, Yi Qianqian was immediately amused by her own thoughts. It was just a coincidence. Yi Qianqian picked up the noodles with her chopsticks and took a big bite. Fang Tongtong stared at Yi Qianqian eating the noodles. She felt nervous and excited. It felt as if she was doing something bad. However, Fang Tongtong was addicted to the feeling and couldn't extricate herself. Excited, after finishing her noodles, Yi Qianqian sat on the sofa and played with her phone. All she could think about was what Fang Tongtong had just said about her little boyfriend. They were both doctors, and they looked the same. It was just a work-related injury. In the past, no matter how busy Shinjilia was, he would always report to her. However, Shinjilia suddenly told her that he was going to the capital and didn't even come back to pack his clothes. Wasn't it a little rushed? Shinjilia. After dying several times in the boring puzzle game, Yi Qianqian closed the page and stared at the coffee table in a daze. Once she thought about it, Yi Qianqian couldn't stop. Some things simply couldn't stand up to any scrutiny. Once one seriously analyzed it, everything that was supposed to be logical became wrong. Yi Qianqian picked up her phone and thought about it. She decided to call Shinjilia. The call was quickly connected. Shinjilia seemed to be watching television. She could hear the sound of the television. Yi Qianqian asked, "What are you doing?" "Nothing. I'm just bored." "Well." Yi Qianqian's heart beat faster. "Do you have nothing to do at home in the capital?" "Yeah. I'm bored, but my grandmother won't let me go back to Kingstown. She wants me to stay for a few more days. Why don't I go to the capital to look for you? Haven't you always wanted me to meet your parents and your grandmother? I think I'm ready." Yi Qianqian's heart beat faster. She held her breath nervously. She thought that Shinjilia would happily agree to it. Surprisingly, Shinjilia didn't respond immediately. Instead, he paused for a moment before saying, "Recently, I've been quite busy at home. My brother's matter has caused a huge commotion at home. It's not appropriate for you to come at this time." Yi Qianqian was a little disappointed. She felt that something was amiss and asked, "Is Shin Manting back?" Shinjilia paused for a moment. "Yeah. She's pregnant?" "Yes. It just so happens that I haven't seen Shin Manting in a long time. I'll go and see her." Shinjilia was even more flustered. He tightened his grip on his phone and thought for a moment before replying, "Anything is fine. But Manting's mood hasn't been stable lately, and the house is a little chaotic. I might not be able to entertain you when you're here. Grandma and Mom and Dad have been quite vexed lately." This meant that he didn't want her to go. Yi Qianqian was disappointed. "All right. Next time, then." After talking about some trivial matters, Yi Qianqian grew bored. She hung up the phone and leaned back on the sofa. It shouldn't be like this. Shinjilia should have overcome all obstacles and welcomed her no matter what. Chapter 1757. It was a sleepless night. Perhaps it was because she had slept too much during the day, or perhaps it was because of the increasingly strange thoughts in her heart, but she couldn't fall asleep no matter how hard she tossed and turned. The next day, Fang Tongtong still woke up early. When Yi Qianqian saw her putting on her shoes in the entryway, she asked, "Did you go out?" "Yeah." Fang Tongtong seemed to be in a good mood as she hummed a tune. When Yi Qianqian saw Fang Tongtong's expression, she casually asked, "Which hospital does your boyfriend work at?" Fang Tongtong was taken aback. She suddenly felt guilty and laughed. "At a not-so-big hospital. Private enterprise?" "Not really. What's your name?" Fang Tongtong didn't know what to say. She couldn't possibly say that it was Huxin Hospital, could she? He suddenly remembered the name of a hospital that he had inadvertently memorized last time and said, Fangqi Hospital. Damn, that hospital is a Class 3 Grade A hospital. How can it be a small hospital? Fang Tongtong felt a little awkward. She laughed dryly and said, "Ha. I don't really understand either. I'll be leaving first. Wait for me, I'm ready too. I have to go to work, let's go together." After Yi Qianqian was done drying the clothes, she went to her room to retrieve her bag. She put on her shoes and walked toward Fang Tongtong. Fang Tongtong looked at the time with an indecipherable expression on her face. "Let's go." The two of them got off the elevator. There was a bus stop at the entrance of the neighborhood. Yi Qianqian walked toward the bus stop and waved at Fang Tongtong. "I'm going to work." Fang Tongtong nodded and waved her hand as she hailed a taxi. Fangqi Hospital was on the opposite side of the bus stop. It was not far from here. It would only take about 10 minutes to walk there. When Yi Qianqian looked at the taxi, she realized that it had originally been moving in the same direction, but it had deliberately turned around and headed in the opposite direction. Yi Qianqian frowned when she saw that. Fang Tongtong was lying to her. The doubts that had tormented her for the whole night were magnified at this moment. Yi Qianqian saw an empty car driving over from afar. She stopped it and pointed at the car that Fang Tongtong was in and said, "Follow that car." The chauffeur gave Yi Qianqian a strange look but didn't ask any questions. He quickly drove off. There were many cars coming and going during the rush hour. Yi Qianqian sent a message to her supervisor to ask for a leave of absence. After a lot of negotiation, she was finally granted her leave. Fang Tongtong's car drove further and further away. About 20 minutes later, she finally stopped. Huxin Hospital. When Yi Qianqian stopped, the sense of crisis that had been lurking in her heart suddenly rose. But it was quickly suppressed. No. It was just a coincidence. Yi Qianqian refused to believe her. She paid the taxi fare and followed Fang Tongtong's footsteps. Fang Tongtong bought breakfast at the entrance of the hospital. From the looks of it, she seemed to be very familiar with the people in the hospital. She greeted quite a few people along the way. "Xiao Fang, you're here again. Brother Shen is probably still sleeping. You're so early every day. Brother Shen is so lucky." Yi Qianqian's heart felt like it was being squeezed by a large hand. It was so heavy that she couldn't breathe. Brother Shen, who else could it be but Shenjilia? Her originally unshakable trust in Shenjilia was suddenly lifted up in front of her. It was as if he was asking her, "Do you still believe in him?" Fang Tongtong walked all the way to a ward. Yi Qianqian followed her and dodged around. Fortunately, there were many people around, so it wasn't obvious what her motive was. Chapter 1758. His familiarity with the ward did not show any awareness of entering someone else's boyfriend's ward. Fang Tongtong quickly closed the door. Yi Qianqian leaned against the door and picked up her phone. After turning his phone to silent mode, he sent a WeChat message to Shenjilia. "Are you awake?" The phone inside rang. It was Shenjilia. The last sliver of hope that Yi Qianqian was holding on to shattered inch by inch. His originally enthusiastic heart also cooled down inch by inch. "You're eating this again? Can't you come up with something new?" Shenjilia's voice was filled with disdain. Yi Qianqian's heart felt as if it had been struck by something. The originally bright and clean mirror instantly cracked. Her phone vibrated. It was a reply from Shenjilia. "Shenjilia, I've been woken up by my own handsomeness." Yi Qianqian gripped her phone tightly. Her throat hurt. Yi Qianqian deliberately searched for the airport's address and sent it over. "Sisai, pick me up in the afternoon. I'm coming for you." Shenjilia was inside, and when he saw the news, his body trembled. "What's wrong?" Fang Tongtong asked. "Qianqian wants to go to the capital to look for me." Shenjilia felt a headache coming on. Gosh, how am I supposed to play this game? Sisai, I have a surprise for you, ha ha ha. Aren't you in the capital? Shinjilia, of course I'm in the capital. It's just that I'm overwhelmed with work at home. It's best if you don't come. Sisai, you were the one who told me to meet your parents, and now you're telling me not to go. Are you crazy? Sisai, do you not want me to see your parents anymore? Have you changed your mind? Falling in love with someone else? Shinjilia, how is that possible? I'll have to meet my parents sooner or later, but now isn't the right time. Sisai, then tell me clearly, is it you who won't let me go, or is it your grandma's parents who won't let me go? Shinjilia, it's me. I don't think the timing is right. Sisai, why is the timing not right? Shinjilia, busy at home. Sisai, I want to hear the truth. Shinjilia, I'm really busy. Yi Qianqian's heart sank when she read his words. Clutching his phone, he felt as if his heart was being pricked by needles. Shinjilia looked at his phone and realized that Yi Qianqian wasn't replying to him anymore. After some thought, Shinjilia called Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian looked at the phone and refused to answer it. Shinjilia panicked and made another call. Yi Qianqian composed herself and took a deep breath before answering the call. Shinjilia was delighted and quickly called out, "Hey, Qianqian." "Yes. Where are you now?" "I came to find you." "That. I've been busy lately, so, is that so?" Yi Qianqian no longer lowered her voice. He turned to the side and pushed the door open. Fang Tongtong sat on a stool by the bed and was preparing breakfast. Shinjilia leaned against the headboard and was on the phone. When Fang Tongtong and Shinjilia saw Yi Qianqian standing at the door, they were both shocked. When Yi Qianqian saw the scene, she found it even more hilarious. Her best friend, and her boyfriend, the man she thought she could entrust the rest of her life to, I really, really like him. Does she like you? Of course. Otherwise, it's just that I'm hot-headed. It's boring. So, they were really together, right? Chapter 1759. Shinjilia couldn't react at all. He stared at Yi Qianqian for a moment before he mumbled, "Qianqian." Yi Qianqian opened the door wider and walked forward. Fang Tongtong looked at Yi Qianqian. She wanted to say something, but when she opened her mouth, no words came out. Awkward. Especially when she thought about what she said to Yi Qianqian the night before, Fang Tongtong felt that her current posture was a little ugly. Best friend. Boyfriend. Best friend's boyfriend. Since everyone is here, there are some things that we should all be clear about. Yi Qianqian's lips were slightly curved, but her uneven breathing clearly revealed her feelings at that moment. She wasn't as calm as she appeared to be. Shinjilia's heart skipped a beat. He immediately stood up and walked forward. But before he could say anything, he saw Yi Qianqian walk forward. Yi Qianqian's cheeks, which were usually gentle and playful, were abnormally red. Yi Qianqian gritted her teeth and walked forward. She raised her hand and slapped it hard. Slap. The loud sound of the slap was especially loud in the quiet ward. Shinjilia was stunned by the slap. He felt a burning sensation on his cheek, and Yi Qianqian's expression was almost contorted, but she still tried her best to maintain a calm expression. Yi Qianqian was furious. Fang Tongtong exclaimed in surprise. She immediately stood up and explained, "Qianqian, you've misunderstood. I don't have the kind of relationship you think I have with him." In Yi Qianqian's ears, Fang Tongtong's words sounded more like a proud boast. "Huh?" Yi Qianqian looked at Fang Tongtong. Her voice was so cold that even she found it strange. "Is this the doctor boyfriend you were talking about? Mutual affection?" Fang Tongtong felt as if she had bitten her tongue. She wanted to say something, but she couldn't say a word. Yes, she was the one who said it. She was the one who said all the words. Qianqian. Shinjilia held Yi Qianqian's hand uneasily. Let go. Yi Qianqian was on the verge of breaking down. Her voice was already choking. Shinjilia, what do you take me for? Shinjilia panicked. He grabbed her hand and squeezed it tightly. I just don't want you to worry, get lost. Let go of Shinjilia. We're done for. Yi Qianqian flung his hand off forcefully and bellowed, go to hell with the capital. Go to hell with your work. Qianqian. Fang Tongtong panicked as well. She had grown up with Yi Qianqian and had never seen Yi Qianqian in such a state. I'm sorry, Qianqian, F*CKU. I'm sorry, B*TCH. Yi Qianqian retreated and suddenly laughed. Do you like to steal from others? Fine, I'll give it to you. I don't care for such a piece of sh*t. Fang Tongtong's breathing quickened. She found it hard to believe that Yi Qianqian would have such a side to her. Her hysterical words fell into Shinjilia's ears. It was as if Yi Qianqian had taken a hoe and was viciously digging into his heart. Yi Qianqian. Shinjilia wanted to chase after her, but Yi Qianqian retreated as if she had seen a wild beast. Yi Qianqian's flushed face was filled with disdain. She turned around abruptly and broke into a run. Shinjilia panicked. The moment Yi Qianqian turned around, he immediately chased after her. He reached out to grab her arm and shouted, Qianqian, Qianqian, it's not what you think it is. A few days ago, Chapter 1760. Everyone turned to look at her. Shinjilia was holding her hand. It was his right hand. It was his right arm that had received 12 stitches. Yi Qianqian didn't hold back. Shinjilia grunted, but he didn't loosen his grip on her arm. I told you about the female patient a few days ago. Do you remember her? It's her, let go. Yi Qianqian calmed down, but her voice was as cold as ice. Shinjilia panicked even more. When he saw Yi Qianqian like this, the words that were on the tip of his tongue were stuck in his throat like a fish bone. He couldn't get them out. Qianqian, I told you to let go. Are you deaf? Yi Qianqian screamed hysterically. More and more people gathered to watch. Lao Zhou was attracted by the noise. He squeezed into the crowd and saw Yi Qianqian holding Shinjilia. When he saw the blood on Shinjilia's arm, he was even more shocked. He ran forward and asked, Brother Shen, what happened? As he shouted, he rushed forward and grabbed Shinjilia's hand. Oh my God, do you want to die? Let go. If you don't let go, your hand will be crippled. Shinjilia's eyes were fixed on Yi Qianqian. Qianqian, I didn't mean to lie to you. I just didn't want you to worry. Let go. This is the last time. Although Yi Qianqian's face was red, her eyes were extremely calm. She looked at Shinjilia coldly. I heard that if you bite your tongue into an artery, you'll die. Her voice was as cold as ice. She looked at Shinjilia indifferently. Her expression was cold and determined. It was Shinjilia's first time seeing Yi Qianqian like this. He was a little scared. His hand unconsciously loosened. Yi Qianqian flung him aside forcefully and strode forward. Yi Qianqian. Shinjilia shouted and instinctively wanted to chase after her. However, Lao Zhou quickly grabbed him and said, Brother Shen, you don't want your hand anymore? Shinjilia roared, No. He pushed Lao Zhou away and chased after her. However, there were many people in the corridor. Yi Qianqian squeezed into the crowd. By the time Shinjilia caught up with her, he had already lost sight of her. Shinjilia looked at the corridor and strode out. He looked left and right, but in the end, he didn't see anything. Lao Zhou caught up with him, looking a little nervous. Brother Shen, you should take care of your wound as soon as possible. Look, it's bleeding. If it gets infected, it won't be a joke. Where's my woman? Shinjilia turned to look at Lao Zhou. Have you seen her? Where did she go? Lao Zhou was stunned. He hadn't been paying attention to the girl at all. All his attention was on Shinjilia's arm. Lao Zhou didn't know how to respond to Shinjilia's question. Shinjilia gritted his teeth. Give me the phone. When Elder Zhou heard this roar, he knew that the situation was getting serious. Shinjilia snatched the phone from her and dialed Yi Qianqian's number. Yi Qianqian turned around and ran into the fire escape door. He closed the door and listened to the sounds coming and going from outside. It was as if the whole world had become distant at this moment. Chapter 1761. It was over. It was time to end it. She had a best friend and a boyfriend. It was time to end it. She closed her eyes tightly and turned to walk to basement 1. Basement 1 and basement 2 were both underground parking lots. Neither Shinjilia nor Fang Tongtong could go there. Yi Qianqian jogged down the stairs. Her phone began to vibrate. She picked it up and saw an unknown number. She was in Kingstown. She didn't think anyone else would call her at a time like this except for Shinjilia or Fang Tongtong. She glanced at the number, hung up, and switched off her phone. Shinjilia searched the entire hospital, regardless of whether it was the corridors or the doors. He also asked the patients, nurses, and doctors who were passing by. But no one saw him. It was as if he was hiding on purpose and didn't want Shinjilia to find him. Fang Tongtong followed behind Shinjilia. Lao Zhou looked at Shinjilia awkwardly and said, Brother Shin, you can't do this. Your hand. Shinjilia glanced at his arms. His hands, which had been properly bandaged, were now stained red with blood. It looked a little scary. Shinjilia only realized that his arm was hurting when he saw it. Yeah, Shinjilia replied. His pale face turned even uglier. Let's go. No matter what, you have to take care of yourself first before you explain this misunderstanding to sister-in-law. Lao Zhou scratched his head. He was already clumsy, but he didn't know what else to say. He subconsciously glanced at Fang Tongtong. Lao Zhou felt even more awkward. He had always thought that Miss Fang was Shinjilia's boyfriend. He had been calling her sister-in-law for so many days. He was wondering why Shinjilia didn't seem to be that passionate toward Fang Tongtong. He thought he was a hypocrite and didn't love his girlfriend as much as he appeared to love her. He didn't expect it to be a misunderstanding. In this way, everything made sense. Fang Tongtong had been trying to get close to Shinjilia, but Shinjilia's attitude was neither too close nor too distant. Lao Zhou didn't think it was appropriate for this girl. When almost everyone who knew Shinjilia started calling her sister-in-law, she had never denied it. Otherwise, why would he think so? Based on Shinjilia's reaction, it was obvious that the girl was his real girlfriend. It was obvious that their relationship had fallen apart. Shinjilia walked back to his room like a zombie. He retrieved his cell phone and dialed Yi Yuyu's number. Yi Yuyu was still sleeping. It was rare for Li Jinnan to be at home with his wife. When he saw that the caller was Shinjilia, he didn't hesitate to answer the call. What's up? His voice was light and carried the laziness of someone who just woke up. When Shinjilia heard Li Jinnan's voice, he was silent for a moment before asking, Where's Yuyu? He's asleep. What's the matter? I'll pass on the message for you. Did Qianqian call her? No. Well, if Qianqian calls you, please let me know. I'll be very grateful. Chapter 1762. Did they quarrel? Shinjilia chuckled, but his eyes were slightly red. If only it were that simple. That's all. Let me know if I call you again. Okay. After hanging up, Shinjilia passed the phone to Yu Lily. Yi Qianqian didn't have many friends. Other than her best friend Fang Tongtong, Yu Lily was the closest to her. The phone rang a few times, but no one picked up. Shinjilia gripped his phone tightly. Yu Lily was also pregnant, so she was probably still asleep. This also meant that it was very likely that Yi Qianqian hadn't called her at all. Otherwise, Yu Lily would have long been awake. As expected, the call was quickly connected. It was exactly as Shinjilia had expected. Shinjilia hung up the phone in defeat and allowed his colleague to treat his wound. Fong Tongtong stood far away and looked at Shinjilia, not daring to approach. Suddenly, Shinjilia looked over. Fong Tongtong suddenly tensed up. Her entire body tensed up as she looked at Shinjilia. Shinjilia stared at Fong Tongtong for a long time before saying, "You should go back to Yun Town. It's already chaotic enough." He didn't scold or complain. There was only this kind of estrangement that was so obvious that it made people's hearts feel stuffy. It was cold and determined, without the slightest bit of mercy. Although Shinjilia wasn't close to her these days, he had never treated her with such an attitude. But I'm very curious. Aren't you Qianqian's best friend? Why didn't you say a word when she was so angry just now? Based on her trust in you, she would believe you as long as you explain. Shinjilia's voice was a little sharp, and it could even be said to be a little aggressive. Fong Tongtong held her breath. She didn't know what to say. Gu Yuanqing heard the commotion and rushed over. He heard Shinjilia's words the moment he entered. When he heard that, he knew things weren't simple. He was about to speak up for Fong Tongtong when he saw Shinjilia's slightly swollen face the moment he entered. It was red and swollen. Gu Yuanqing swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue and said, "Brother Shin, your face." Shinjilia's eyes were fixed on Fong Tongtong as he asked indifferently, "Did you tell her something else?" Fong Tongtong's eyes were fixed on Shinjilia. Fong Tongtong didn't know how to respond to his interrogation. Or rather, when faced with such a Shinjilia, her reflexes had been forced to slow down by half a beat. She did something bad. But how could she say it? How could she say it here? I didn't. Qianqian's personality has always been like this. You've lived with her for so long. You know her very well, don't you? She's always been like this since she was young. She'll be happy if things go her way, and she'll make a fuss if things don't go her way. Fong Tongtong looked at Shinjilia. But this was the truth, wasn't it? Yes, that was the truth. That's the kind of person Qianqian is. She likes to make a mountain out of a molehill. The only reason she's treating you like this now is because she doesn't love you enough. Otherwise, why wouldn't she listen to your explanation? Chapter 1763. Fong Tongtong's words were harsh and hurtful. When the people in the ward heard that, they couldn't help but look at each other. Finally, their gazes fell on Shinjilia. Shinjilia's face, which was already dark to begin with, darkened. For a long time, Shinjilia had always given people the impression of a warm spring breeze. He was an outstanding man who relied on his own strength to sit in this position at such a young age. Shinjilia was not only capable, but he also had an enviable temper. Everyone there was the same. They had never seen Shinjilia with such an expression. "What business is it of yours?" Shinjilia looked at Fong Tongtong coldly. "I know how my own woman treats me." There was not the slightest warmth in his gaze. Fong Tongtong was a little frightened by Shinjilia's behavior. She mumbled, "How can it have nothing to do with me? Yi Qianqian is my best friend. She can slap you indiscriminately now, but what about next time? Have you thought about what will happen next time? Yi Qianqian has always been this unruly and willful. She doesn't care about other people's feelings at all. You heard what she said just now. It's obvious that she misunderstood us, but she didn't even listen to our explanation. Aren't you angry at all?" Yi Qianqian looked at Shinjilia. "Fong Tongtong," Shinjilia interrupted her and said coldly, "You claim that Yi Qianqian is your bestie, but based on what I know, a bestie is equivalent to a brother in a man's circle." When Fong Tongtong heard that, she didn't know what he was trying to say. She looked at Shinjilia and didn't know what to do. "To be honest, if my brother talked bad about me in front of my girlfriend like this, I wouldn't hesitate to break up with him." Fong Tongtong was shocked and tried to defend herself. "But I'm telling the truth." "The truth?" Shinjilia's expression darkened even further. "Yi Qianqian treats you with all her heart. What about you?" You're telling her boyfriend the truth? Old Shen, I'm doing this for your own good. Fang Tongtong's voice sounded much weaker than before. That's enough. Shenjilia smiled, but there was an indescribable sarcasm in his smile. It's all my fault. Shenjilia. Fang Tongtong was at a loss. You should leave. I don't think there's anything left to say between us. Shenjilia looked away and looked at the wound that he had just bandaged. I don't think Qianqian needs a bestie like you anymore. Fang Tongtong subconsciously recalled Yi Qianqian's near breakdown state earlier. At the same time, she also recalled what Yi Qianqian had said to her the night before. Best friend, the hospital's underground parking lot was huge. It was so huge that it took Yi Qianqian more than 10 minutes to walk out of the hospital. The people who came and went seemed to have witnessed the farce just now, and there might be people who recognized her, so they took a few more glances at her. The sun was scorching, and Yi Qianqian's entire body trembled unconsciously. Even her eyes felt like they were being ironed. Layers of scorching heat rose up, stirring up a dense mist. Yi Qianqian's vision was blurry. She lowered her head and walked aimlessly like a loser. Yi Qianqian would never have imagined that her best friend and her boyfriend would end up together. Chapter 1764. Yi Qianqian walked to the side of the road in a daze and looked for a taxi. When she got in the taxi, the driver glanced at her and asked, "Where to?" To where? Yi Qianqian didn't know either. Go home? No, she didn't want to go home. When she thought about how Fang Tongtong had intruded into the happy nest she thought she had with Shenjilia, she couldn't help but feel disgusted. Her best friend had become a mistress. How could she encounter such a melodramatic thing? Yi Qianqian's lips twitched and she asked, "Do you know any fun places around here?" It's not a stupid place to go alone. The driver could tell that Yi Qianqian was in a bad mood and asked, "Are you in a bad mood?" Yeah. Did you quarrel with your boyfriend? We broke up. Of course I have to eat alone when I'm heartbroken. Have you eaten? No. Yi Qianqian pursed her lips and touched her stomach. I'm really hungry. Do you know where to go now? I don't know. Yi Qianqian pursed her lips, and she couldn't hold back her tears. That B** starred usually cooks. The driver was speechless. When he saw her like this, he sighed and said, "I'll take you to a good place. My wife likes to eat desserts there. I heard it's delicious there." Yeah. Yi Qianqian nodded with tears in her eyes. Thank you, sir. The driver looked at her sympathetically through the rearview mirror and quickly started the car. The driver sent Yi Qianqian to a famous high-end shopping mall in the city. Yi Qianqian followed the driver's instructions and walked over. There was a dessert shop at the bottom of the shopping mall. The decoration looked very elegant. After Yi Qianqian walked in, she randomly ordered a few desserts. Looking around, she saw that the people around her were either couples or families. Yi Qianqian sat alone on a chair and looked at the empty seat across from her. She felt stupid. Her red eyes were burning, and she couldn't hold back her tears. The restaurant was very quiet. Yi Qianqian lowered her head and covered her mouth. She leaned against the table, and her shoulders trembled slightly. She bit her lower lip hard to prevent herself from crying. No one noticed her. When the waitress served the dessert, she noticed Yi Qianqian's trembling shoulders and thoughtfully placed the dish on the table. She gently knocked on the table and softly said, "Eat it while it's hot. It won't taste as good when it's cold." Yi Qianqian raised her head slightly and glanced at the exquisite dishes in front of her. She sniffed and reached out to pull them over. "Thank you." His voice was low and choked with sobs. The waiter smiled and quickly left. But when he returned, he was holding a small toy in his hand. It was a small doll in the classic Super Mario style, small and cute. The waiter pressed a button, and then the Super Mario ringtone sounded. It was cute and funny. With tears in her eyes, Yi Qianqian raised her head and glanced at the waitress. The waiter's eyes curved slightly as he said, "It's for you." "Thank you." Yi Qianqian pressed the button a few times. The ringtone sounded again and again. It was very cute. After Yi Qianqian finished her meal, the waiter even gave her a discount when she paid the bill. Yi Qianqian found it a little amusing. She didn't know that she could get such an advantage by eating alone. Walking out of the mall, the sun was even brighter. Chapter 1765. Yi Qianqian looked up and saw the five-star hotel directly across the street. Next to the hotel was a KTV. Yi Qianqian booked a room and ordered 2 dozen beers. The reason was that the most cost-effective drink here was beer. Buy 1 dozen, get 1 dozen free. Yi Qianqian asked for the smallest private room in the most remote corner of the room and chose all the songs on the charts. Yi Qianqian leaped onto the table and howled, "I'm dead. Love them all." The waiter stood at the door and frowned as he listened. That was King awful. At first, the waiters would come and take a few glances, but in the end, they couldn't stand it anymore and no one approached. Yi Qianqian downed bottle after bottle. When it came to beer, Yi Qianqian never restrained herself. In the past, Yi Qianqian would drink a cup or 2 if she had nothing to do. However, ever since she started dating Shenjilia, Yi Qianqian had stopped drinking. First, it was because Shenjilia didn't like it. Second, it was because Shenjilia refused to buy it. This time, he had to drink to his heart's content. Yi Qianqian gulped down a few bottles. Suddenly, a familiar melody filled the air. She used to like a song very much, Fan Weiqi's, "One Like Summer, One Like Autumn." If it weren't for you, I wouldn't believe it. A friend is more devoted than a lover. Even if I'm too busy dating to freeze you. You don't hate me. You just yell at me. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be sure. A friend listens better than a lover. My unspoken words, my thoughtless words. I can't leave, darling, and I can't leave you. Yi Qianqian screamed out the lyrics in tears and threw the microphone away in the end. Go to hell with your bestie. Yi Qianqian screamed. Tears streamed down her cheeks. He sat down and opened a few more bottles. From 11:00 in the morning until 1:00 in the afternoon. Yi Qianqian had already drunk more than a dozen bottles. She was lying on the sofa, groggy and half-dead. Burp. Yi Qianqian burped, stood up, and stumbled into the bathroom. After the water was drained, the loud music in the room was still playing. She was the only one in the small room, and the floor was littered with wine bottles. Yi Qianqian leaned back on the sofa, her whole body sprawled out. Yi Qianqian was lying down when she suddenly rummaged through her bag. He took out the phone that had been switched off for a long time and turned it on. The words on the phone were no longer clear. Yi Qianqian couldn't even tell whether it was 1 word or 2. After staring at the screen for a long time, she finally saw that Shenjilia had made more than 20 calls. There were more than 40 missed calls. Shenjilia, Fong Tong Tong, Yu Lily, Yi Yu Yu, there were quite a lot of people. There were also hundreds of WeChat messages and a series of messages bombarding him. Yi Qianqian chuckled. She opened the keyboard and dialed a string of numbers that she had memorized by heart. However, when she dialed the number, it turned into 3 words, Shenjilia. It was as if the person on the other end of the line had been waiting for her call. As soon as the call connected, Shenjilia immediately picked it up. Hello? Burp. Yi Qianqian snorted and didn't say a word. When Shenjilia heard the voice, he was delighted. Qianqian, is that you? Where are you? Shen. Jilia? It's me. Are you drunk? I'll pick you up now. Dash. Chapter 1766. Yi Qianqian wasn't at home. After Shenjilia bandaged his wound, he went to all the places that Yi Qianqian might have gone to. Among them were Yi Qianqian's company, Yi Yuyu's home, Yu Lily's home, and the places that they often ate at. However, there were none of them. Only God knew that Shinjilia was about to go crazy. He finally received a call from Yi Qianqian. When Shinjilia heard Yi Qianqian's drunken voice, the weight in his heart didn't drop. Instead, it was suddenly lifted, and his nerves were stretched to the extreme. Shinjilia's anxious voice came through the phone. In a daze, Yi Qianqian felt waves of grievance engulf her. The anger that had been suppressed in her heart for a long time surged out. Yi Qianqian burst into tears. She didn't even try to hide her sobs. The earth-shattering cries were transmitted through the KTV microphone to the entire room, echoing incessantly. The waiter heard the commotion and quickly came over to take a look. There were many bottles of alcohol in front of Yi Qianqian. She was lying unsteadily on the sofa. Shinjilia, you be ****. Shinjilia felt that something was wrong. He asked, "Where are you?" "I'll go find you." "Don't scare me, Qianqian. Things are not what you think they are." F*****. Yi Qianqian cried and screamed. She rubbed her eyes hard. "I must have been blind to have fallen for someone like you. You be *****. You be *****. You could have slept with anyone." Sob. "You just had to sleep with that be *****, Fong Tong Tong. She's my bestie." Bestie. Burp. Yi Qianqian burped. She was about to speak again, but she suddenly couldn't breathe. Her entire face turned red, and she vomited toward the edge of the sofa. Blarg. The microphone was so close that the sound could be heard throughout the entire room. When Shinjilia heard the sound, he naturally knew what was going on. He ran toward the door and shouted, "Yi Qianqian, how much did you drink? Where are you at the bar? Or the restaurant?" The only response he got was the sound of vomiting. Shinjilia scratched his ears and cheeks. When the sound of vomiting stopped, he asked, "Qianqian?" However, the other side had already quietened down, and there was no longer any sound. Shinjilia didn't dare to hang up the phone. He walked on the road, but there was nothing he could do. Where the hell is she? Where could she be? Shinjilia had no clue what to do. All he could do was call out her name over and over again as he waited for her response. Yi Qianqian didn't say another word. It was as if she had fallen asleep. Silence. It was eerily quiet. Shinjilia could feel the pain radiating from his hand. As he looked at the wound, Shinjilia couldn't help but recall what Fong Tong Tong had said in the ward. "Yi Qianqian has never thought about marrying you. Do you think she'll grow old with you? Don't be naive. This is just your wishful thinking." This sentence was like a magic sound lingering in his ears, lingering in his mind. Just wishful thinking? Yi Qianqian had always made it very clear that she didn't want to get married for the time being. Chapter 1767. Under such circumstances, Shinjilia couldn't be sure how much of what he said was true and how much was false. Perhaps Yi Qianqian only wanted to test his loyalty to her under those circumstances, or perhaps Yi Qianqian was serious. However, there was no doubt that even if Yi Qianqian had such intentions, it had been completely erased by his adultery with Fong Tong Tong. Shinjilia sat on the sofa in frustration. He scratched his head as he listened to the silence on the other end of the phone. Even if he really had a chance, he had already dug his own grave. This feeling was even more unbearable than not having one in the first place. Defeat. Many things in Shinjilia's life had been smooth sailing. He had always prided himself on his intelligence. This was the first time he had encountered such an embarrassing situation. Shinjilia closed his eyes. After some time, Yi Qianqian's voice suddenly came from the other end. "Shinjilia." Shinjilia perked up and immediately sat up straight. "I'm here." However, the voice on the other end seemed to be just sleep-talking. Very soon, there was no sound. "Shinjilia." The voice was extremely soft and soft. Shinjilia quietly listened to the movements on the other end and said softly, "Qianqian, tell me where you are." "I was wrong. I was really wrong. Yi Qianqian heard a low intake of breath on the other end. She sounded extremely aggrieved, but she didn't cry out. Qianqian, Yi Qianqian's stomach was full of water. It didn't take long for her to want to use the toilet. She subconsciously sniffled and got up. Vaguely, she seemed to hear Shenjilia's voice. However, after looking around, she couldn't find anything. Yi Qianqian didn't care. She stumbled into the bathroom in the private room. After turning on the water, she felt extremely thirsty. When she walked out, she saw a bottle of beer and opened it. Yi Qianqian tilted her head back and took a big gulp. She gulped down half a bottle in one go. Yi Qianqian wiped her mouth and looked up at the screen. The song was still playing, but Yi Qianqian had turned off the volume. Yi Qianqian pressed the button to play the song again. Shenjilia immediately heard the exaggerated and terrifying music. Caught off guard, Shenjilia jumped in fright. He looked at his cell phone and confirmed that he was indeed on the line with Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian hollered into the microphone, "Of course it's my fault. Why did you suddenly leave and leave me behind? Why did you see through it so quickly? Why did you leave me behind?" A drunken voice with a lisp. There were even some parts that were read out directly, and the tone couldn't even keep up. Shenjilia was speechless. KTV. Drinking in a KTV? Shenjilia immediately got up, opened the door, and walked out. Yi Qianqian finished all the beer, and her face was shockingly hot. Her head was dizzy. She grabbed her bag and stumbled out. I'm home, I'm home, I'm home. Yi Qianqian muttered under her breath. She pressed the button for the elevator and went downstairs. He looked around. A drunken woman like Yi Qianqian was very eye-catching. His whole body reeked of beer as he stumbled along with a bag. What Yi Qianqian had always wanted to do, but was reluctant to do, was to splurge on a night at a 5-star hotel. As the saying goes, drinking boosts courage. Chapter 1768. The waitress had been watching Yi Qianqian for a long time. When she saw Yi Qianqian drinking alone, she couldn't stand it anymore. When she came back from the bathroom, she was gone. At first, she thought that the woman had gone to the bathroom. But after going back and forth 3 times, she was nowhere to be found. In the end, the waiter still walked in, but as soon as he entered, he smelled an extremely unpleasant smell of alcohol, as well as the nauseating stench of vomit. She pinched her nose and looked around again. Then, she saw a cell phone on the sofa. The cell phone was a beautiful rose gold color. She picked it up and saw a call page on it. The call had been connected for nearly 2 hours. The waiter clicked his tongue when he saw that the phone was indeed clean. He then turned off the music, picked up the phone, and put it to his ear. Hello? Shenjilia was blindly searching the KTV near his home. He kept an eye on the cell phone for any signs of activity. The sudden sound of a man's voice made Shenjilia's entire body tense up. Almost reflexively, Shenjilia's eyes narrowed and he asked, "Who are you?" When the waitress heard the voice, she knew that the caller was not friendly. She coughed lightly and said, "Hello, who is the owner of this cell phone to you?" "She's my woman." "Where is she?" "This lady is drunk. She should have left by now, but her cell phone is still in the private room." "She left? Where did she go?" Shenjilia's heart was in his throat. "How could you do this? You didn't even look after the client. How could you let a drunk woman leave?" We can't control the client's freedom to come and go, but she should have just left. She shouldn't have gone far. Where is your place? Give me the address immediately. I'll be there right now." The waitress gave the address and left the cell phone at the front desk. Shenjilia hailed a cab and realized that the place was very far away. It was more than 30 kilometers away from their home. It took Shenjilia almost an hour to reach the place. The cell phone was found, but where was the person? Yi Qianqian's head fell onto the bed and she fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, his head was so dizzy that it felt like it was going to explode. Frowning, he had unknowingly sweated all over. When he got up, he remembered that he had fallen asleep in the hotel. After fanning herself, she realized that she hadn't even plugged in the key card to get the electricity. Yi Qianqian inserted the key card and turned on the air conditioner. Her body was burning hot. Looking left and right, she was surprised to see the hotel's name on the left and right. The 5 stars on the signboard displayed the nobility of the place she was currently lying on. Yi Qianqian suddenly felt a pang in her heart. She began to feel the pinch of her money. The saying that drinking boosted one's courage was indeed correct. Under normal circumstances, Yi Qianqian would never have come to a 5-star hotel. First, it was expensive. Second, it was expensive. Third, it was expensive. Oh, I was actually so impulsive, I miscalculated. Yi Qianqian's heart ached as she searched for her cell phone. She wanted to see what time it was, but she couldn't find her cell phone anywhere. Damn it. Yi Qianqian knocked her head. She was so annoyed that she had nothing to say. Even his phone was gone. Who could compare to such bad luck? Chapter 1769. Hello, front desk. Hello, what time is it now? Yi Qianqian's voice was filled with annoyance. The receptionist was stunned when she heard that. She looked at the time and said, "Hello, madam. It's 1:32 in the morning now. How may I help you?" "Well, do you have hangover tea? Get me something to eat while you're at it." "Yes, madam. I'll arrange for a specialist to take your order. Please wait a moment." "Okay. Thank you." Yi Qianqian hung up the phone and lay on the bed like a corpse. Her head was throbbing. She seemed to have downed 24 bottles of wine on her own. There were exactly 24 bottles. This was the first time Yi Qianqian had drunk so much wine, and she had done it alone. Other than going up and down to the toilet and vomiting a few times, there didn't seem to be much of a difference. Yi Qianqian suddenly admired herself. She had gone to a place like a KTV alone and drowned her sorrows in alcohol like a fool. However, it turned out that it didn't work at all. Not only did it not drown her sorrows, but it also caused her to have a hangover. After a while, the waiter came to take their order. After Yi Qianqian ate and drank the hangover soup, she felt much better. After taking a shower, Yi Qianqian slept all the way until dawn. When she woke up, the sky was already bright. Yi Qianqian looked out the window and saw that the sky was already bright. Suddenly, she rolled out of bed like a carp. I'm doomed. I'm doomed. She still had to go to work today. Yi Qianqian immediately rushed to the bathroom. After washing up, she picked up her bag and went downstairs to check out of the room. When she checked out, Yi Qianqian's eyes immediately fell on the big clocks behind the cashier's counter. I'm doomed. It's already 8:30. Yi Qianqian paid the bill. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She rushed out to hail a cab. It was reported that this place was a full 30 kilometers away from the headquarters of Eurasian Comics. In other words, it seemed that she was going to be late no matter what. Yi Qianqian hugged her bag and panicked in the car. Leaders always had the ability to do everything well when things were good. However, when you were late, no matter how good they were to you, they would always have a million ways to scold you. Less than 5 minutes after Yi Qianqian got into the car, the situation dissipated significantly. Now that she was free, Yi Qianqian didn't even have a cell phone. It would take her at least 40 minutes to get to the office from there. She didn't have anything to kill her time with, so her brain started to churn. The emotions that she had been able to toss to the back of her mind since yesterday suddenly surged up and mixed up all of her thoughts. It was difficult to ignore them now. Yi Qianqian's breathing quickened. She twisted the strap of her backpack and stared at her fingernails without blinking. Due to the traffic jam, it was already 9:20 p.m. when Yi Qianqian arrived at the office. 20 minutes late. Yi Qianqian was no longer flustered. $100 would be deducted if she was half an hour late, and $100 would still be deducted if she was 20 minutes late. It was better to slow down and not waste her time. What Yi Qianqian didn't expect was to see a familiar figure standing at the entrance of the company when she reached it. It's over. Chapter 1770. Yi Qianqian couldn't dodge in time and stopped in her tracks. Why would I see the chief editor here? Could it be that she had been late too many times recently, so this leader had come to the door to reprimand her? At the thought of that possibility, Yi Qianqian panicked even more. Yi Qianqian met the chief editor's gaze and smiled sheepishly. When the chief editor saw Yi Qianqian, she immediately stopped making the call and looked at Yi Qianqian with a dark expression. When Yi Qianqian saw the situation, she knew that things were not looking good. No matter what, he was still a leader. Yi Qianqian braced herself and walked up to him. Yi Qianqian. The chief editor gritted her teeth and looked at Yi Qianqian. You're finally here. Yi Qianqian shrunk her neck, pouted her lips, and shouted, "Boss." As she screamed, Yi Qianqian lunged at the chief editor. The chief editor stepped back and said with a look of disgust, "You reek of alcohol." Sob, sob, sob. Yi Qianqian howled half-truthfully. "Big boss, I didn't mean to be late. I was heartbroken. Ow, 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 ow. I accidentally woke up late, so," the editor-in-chief's expression was even worse. He said, "You want to die just because of a quarrel? You even lost your phone. You're really something." Yi Qianqian was taken aback. "How did you know that I lost my cell phone?" "How could I not know? Your boyfriend was here just now. When he couldn't wait for you, I asked him to get something to eat before coming back," the chief editor snapped. "It's all thanks to your boyfriend that everyone knows you're late. Even if I wanted to open the back door for you, I wouldn't be able to. Write a report before you get off work today, and the money will still be deducted." Yi Qianqian had a dumbfounded look on her face as she asked, "Did old Shen come by?" "You've been here for a long time. You even stopped me on my way to work and asked me if I knew where you were." "How the hell would I know where you were?" The chief editor's face was full of envy and jealousy. She pointed behind Yi Qianqian and said, "Look, you're here." Yi Qianqian's body stiffened and she turned her head to look. Shenjilia's hand was bandaged and hung from his neck. With a single look, one could tell that the thick bandage was not to be underestimated. When he saw Yi Qianqian, he immediately straightened up and ran toward her. When Yi Qianqian saw him, she grabbed her bag and ran to the office. Shenjilia saw her from afar and shouted, "Yi Qianqian. Let's go. I don't want to see him." Yi Qianqian tugged at her editor. The chief editor was caught off guard and asked, "What's wrong with him?" Yi Qianqian's voice faltered. She didn't know where to start. Yi Qianqian was the queen of performance in the company. She couldn't possibly tell them that she, Yi Qianqian, had been successful in her career, but her best friend had stolen her man in the field of love. "In any case, I don't want to see him. We've already broken up. I don't care what you guys did, but looking at your boyfriend's attitude, if you don't clear things up with him today, he won't leave. You'd better settle this quickly and come back to work as soon as possible. You have so many things to do, and you still have the nerve to ask for leave yesterday." The chief editor pulled her hand back and gave Yi Qianqian a push before quickly walking into the office. When she turned around, Shenjilia was already right in front of her. Shenjilia grabbed Yi Qianqian's hand. Panting, he called out, "Qianqian." Chapter 1771. The emotions that she had suppressed with much difficulty were stirred up again. Yi Qianqian raised her head to take a look. Shenjilia's face was a little pale. There were dark circles under his eyes, and there was a thin layer of stubble on the side of his mouth. His originally bright and clean face seemed to have aged quite a bit in the few days that they had not seen each other. Yi Qianqian pursed her lips. She felt terrible. Everything had changed in the few days that they had not seen each other. How much could a person's heart contain? She had never known that the man that she had always trusted and relied on could coax her into submission and seduce her best friend at the same time. What Yi Qianqian had never expected was that Shenjilia could still shamelessly come up to her even after she had already seen through him. Yi Qianqian laughed coldly. She waved her hand impatiently and shouted, "Are you done yet? I already said that we broke up. Qianqian, listen to my explanation. It's true. Fang Tongtong and I are not in the kind of relationship that you think we are. The reason why she came to the hospital to see me was because I didn't want you to worry. Didn't I tell you a few days ago that I have a female patient who was a mistress? She even aborted her child, so she has some mental problems." Yi Qianqian listened to Shenjilia's words with a cold expression. She did not speak, but there was not much of an expression on her face either. Shenjilia looked at Yi Qianqian. His grip on her hand tightened as he said, "That night, I was working overtime and accidentally touched upon her mental barrier. She wanted to harm herself, but I was stopped by me. She hurt me instead." As he spoke, Shenjilia pointed to his arm, which was tightly bandaged. "Look, this is the evidence. My hand received 12 stitches, and my major blood vessels were injured. After a blood transfusion, I needed to be hospitalized, but I didn't want you to worry, so I told you that I had returned to the capital. I didn't expect that Fang Tongtong would suddenly call Gu Yuansheng." The sneer on Yi Qianqian's face widened. She tried to retract her hand, but it was gripped tightly by Shenjilia's grip. "Gu Yuansheng is a colleague that I wanted to introduce to Fang Tongtong. Didn't I give her a name card?" At that time, Gu Yuansheng told her. "When she said that she wanted to come and take care of me, I rejected her, but she said that she wanted to tell you. I was afraid that if you found out that I was lying to you, you'd be unhappy, so. Are you done?" Yi Qianqian's voice was cold, and her face was expressionless. She looked at Shenjilia, who was holding her hand, and asked, "Are you embarrassed?" When Shenjilia saw her expression, he knew that Yi Qianqian didn't believe him. His heart was burning with anxiety as he shouted, "What I said is true, Qianqian. Oh, then can you let go of me now?" When Yi Qianqian said that, her heart felt like it was being pricked by needles. She looked at Shenjilia with a look of mockery in her eyes. "I've heard your explanation. You can leave now. I have to go back to work. I'm very busy." Shenjilia looked at Yi Qianqian. "Yi Qianqian." Shenjilia's eyes were red. "What do I have to do for you to believe me? I really didn't have anything going on with Fang Tongtong. If there really was anything going on between me and Fang Tongtong, I'll be struck by lightning and die a horrible death." "Fine, I believe you. Let go of me. I'm going to work." Yi Qianqian. Chapter 1772. Shenjilia took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. He said, "Since you haven't eaten yet, let's go eat together. I'll show you the evidence." "There's more evidence?" Yi Qianqian raised her eyebrows slightly. "You're well prepared." Shenjilia was furious, but he couldn't get angry at that moment. He held Yi Qianqian's hand firmly. "Let's go. What do you want to eat?" "Let's eat something fast. I took a day off yesterday to catch an adulterer. Now that I'm done, I have to come back to work. Otherwise, my boss will be angry." Yi Qianqian shrugged helplessly. Catching an adulterer? Shenjilia was even more furious. He unconsciously tightened his grip on her hand. Yi Qianqian felt pain from his grip, but she frowned and didn't say anything. Shenjilia dragged her to a nearby breakfast shop. It was fast, but Yi Qianqian didn't like it. She wasn't usually picky about food, but she didn't like rice noodle rolls. This shop served rice noodle rolls and porridge together. Yi Qianqian hesitated when she saw the shop, but she still walked in. Shenjilia ordered. Both sets were Yi Qianqian's favorite flavors. After ordering, they found a place to sit down. Shenjilia looked at Yi Qianqian and said, if you don't believe me, why can't you suspect your best friend? She was the one who insisted on taking care of me. I couldn't stop her. If I gave her a hard time, she would threaten me. The fact that you were threatened means that you have something on you. You must have done something wrong, right? Bullsh *T. Shinjilia panicked. You're my weakness. You're my weakness. The worst thing I've ever done is that I didn't dare tell you when someone stabbed me. I even told you that I went to the capital. God knows how I managed to survive these past few days. I've always been worried that the woman with the surname Fong would betray me. If you found out that I was lying to you, I'd definitely die a horrible death. As Shinjilia spoke, he didn't forget to look at Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian didn't seem to have much of an expression on her face. She stared intently at the wooden table in the shop. Shinjilia sighed and said, "It's all good now. I don't have to worry about being betrayed anymore. The current situation is even worse than being betrayed by her." Did she say something to you? Based on Yi Qianqian's personality, it was difficult to change her mind once she set her mind on something. However, it wasn't easy for Yi Qianqian to set her mind on something. When Yi Qianqian heard Shinjilia's question, the corners of her mouth twitched, but she didn't say a word. In Shinjilia's eyes, such a small expression was tantamount to a direct admission. "Qianqian, we've been together for so many days. You felt how I've treated you. You should know better than anyone else what kind of person I am. You can't just give me a death sentence based on one side of the story from someone else. Hello, here is your meal." "Thank you," Yi Qianqian said and pulled the food in front of her. Shinjilia's eyes were fixed on Yi Qianqian. He was extremely serious as he said, "You're being unfair to me." "Tong Tong likes you," Yi Qianqian suddenly said. "She likes you very much." "So what?" Shinjilia retorted reflexively, but he soon had a bad feeling. He narrowed his eyes and said dangerously, "Don't tell me, you're thinking of giving up your boyfriend to her?" Chapter 1773. When Shinjilia saw Yi Qianqian's reaction, he was even more certain of his guess. It was highly possible that Yi Qianqian was thinking the same thing. Shinjilia clenched his teeth in anger. He slammed his fist on the table and growled, "Yi Qianqian, what do you take me for?" Shinjilia's voice was not loud, but he slammed the table firmly. Many people around them looked over. Yi Qianqian looked around and felt her face burning. She tugged at Shinjilia and rebuked him, "What are you doing? Do you want everyone to know that we're quarreling? Why don't you tell me what you mean?" Shinjilia's expression was still ugly, but his voice was lower. "Or perhaps, you wanted to break up with me a long time ago, and Fang Tongtong's incident was just an excuse?" Yi Qianqian was annoyed when she heard that. King cheated on me, and you're trying to pin the blame on me? Shinjilia, how can you be so shameless? Shinjilia's face turned even darker. "I didn't. No matter how many times you say it, I didn't. I don't know what Fang Tongtong said to you, but even if there were 10 women like her, the outcome would be the same. I don't like women like that. I like you." Yi Qianqian pursed her lips. "Tong Tong told me that you two are in love with each other and have a lot to talk about when you're together. Indeed, I've seen it too. Your relationship is indeed very good. On the contrary, I'm more like a third party in the middle. You two are in love with each other? Have a lot to talk about?" Shinjilia laughed. "Other than her sucking up to me, what other common topics do we have? Furthermore, if every girl I get along with did the same thing, I wouldn't have lived to this age. Qianqian, you're insulting my character. Do you dare to say that you don't like Fang Tongtong?" "I don't." Yi Qianqian pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She lowered her head and took a sip of porridge. She pushed the rice noodle roll in front of Shinjilia without saying a word. Shinjilia was also hungry. He hadn't had a proper meal since yesterday. When he saw Yi Qianqian's face, his uneasy heart finally calmed down. He took the rice noodle roll and ate slowly. Both Shinjilia and Yi Qianqian tacitly stopped talking. Since he had already said it, Yi Qianqian should understand. She understood him as he understood her. Indeed, Yi Qianqian knew exactly how much truth there was in his words. After all, Shinjilia had nothing to gain from her, except for the sex that he hadn't experienced for days. But with Shinjilia's qualifications, as long as he said the word, countless girls would throw themselves at him and let him choose. But Shinjilia had chosen her. He had shamelessly begged for her forgiveness and her trust. She tried her best to control her temper and explain herself. He didn't have to do this. However, it was precisely because he knew that he felt bitterly disappointed. Her best friend, who had grown up with her, actually lied to her like this for a man. Fang Tongtong had never left Yuntown, and she had never interacted with much of society. However, she had such shrewdness and means. She clearly understood her temperament and knew all of her weaknesses. She knew very well that Yi Qianqian would lose her mind because of her words and Shinjilia's deception. However, Fang Tongtong was wrong about one thing. Yi Qianqian truly loved him and Shinjilia. Chapter 1774. Seeing Yi Qianqian's silence, Shinjilia couldn't help but quiet down. Shinjilia lowered his head and ate without a word. After he finished all the food that Yi Qianqian didn't like, he looked up and asked, "When do you get off work? I'll come and pick you up." "No need. I didn't come to work yesterday. I might have to work overtime today." As she spoke, she looked at Shinjilia's hand and asked, "Is it serious?" Shinjilia, who had been tense all this while, suddenly relaxed. When he saw the worry in Yi Qianqian's eyes, a smile gradually appeared in his eyes as he replied, "It's not serious." "Well, that's good." Yi Qianqian stood up. "I'm full. I'll pay the bill. You can go back to the hospital. I can be discharged." "I don't need to go to the hospital." Shinjilia quickly stood up as well. "I'll be staying at home from now on. The hospital has approved a month's leave. I'll just have to wait for the stitches to be removed before going to the hospital." "Oh." She turned around and said, "I'll pay the bill. Take your time. I can't finish it." "Yeah." Shinjilia looked at her back. "Go ahead then. I'll pick you up tonight." "There's no need." Yi Qianqian turned around without looking back. Shinjilia sat down and breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Qianqian arrived late. When she returned to the office, it was already past 10 o'clock. After more than an hour of work, it was lunch break. Yi Qianqian had just finished her meal, so she wasn't hungry. She sat in the office, unfinished with her work. However, this kind of hard work was not quiet. After a while, he received a call. Fang Tongtong. When Yi Qianqian saw the name, she immediately stopped what she was doing. Her phone vibrated incessantly. Fang Tongtong's name was very eye-catching, the cutest bestie. Cute? Best friend? Yi Qianqian thought about it for a moment and decided to hang up. She used the system's text message to reply, "Hello, I'm busy right now. Call me back later." His friendly tone was so distant that it was indescribable, but everything seemed to be a matter of course. However, Yi Qianqian felt a little sad. She stared at the computer in front of her, but she couldn't seem to get into working mode. Ding dong, Fang Tongtong was on WeChat. "Cutest bestie, Qianqian, I'm back in Yuntown." It was just a few words, but Yi Qianqian stared at it for a long time. A few minutes later, Fang Tongtong sent another WeChat message, "Old Shen is a good man. Cherish him. Don't be so willful in the future. The slap you gave him yesterday made him very sad." Yi Qianqian laughed in exasperation. "Sisai, let's talk. Where are you?" "Cutest bestie, home, Sisai, my house." "Cutie bestie, yeah, I'm packing. Old Shen is helping me too. He's trying to persuade me not to leave, but I don't think it's appropriate." "Cutie bestie, I know what I said might cause you to misunderstand, but I've never told you that the person I'm taking care of recently is my boyfriend. You've misunderstood. Yi Qianqian found it more and more miraculous. She laughed out loud and sent a few question marks over. But no matter how she looked at it, she felt that the word best friend was extremely irritating. She clicked on it and changed it to scheming B*TCH. Chapter 1775. Sisai, Sisai, did I slap you in the face? Why do you mind so much? Double scheming whore, I just feel sorry for old Shen. When Yi Qianqian heard what Fang Tongtong said, she found it even more hilarious. Moving his fingers, he asked, what position should I use? Double scheming whore, old Shen treats you so well. You keep saying that you don't want to marry him, but at the same time, you're dragging him down. Isn't that too unfair? Qianqian, although you are my good friend, I can't stand it anymore. No man can stand being treated like that by a woman in public. Moreover, that place is the hospital where old Shen works. All his colleagues are there. Don't you think it's inappropriate? The more Yi Qianqian read, the darker her expression became. Scheming whore, I think you should apologize to Shen Jilia and admit your mistake. Maybe old Shen will forgive you. Sisai, really? Is that so? Zixixi, alright, shut up. I'll handle my own business. Aren't you going back to Yuntown? Go back. I'll look for you when I'm free. Perhaps one day when they met again, she would still be her, and she would still be her. After all, they were from the same place and grew up together. It was impossible to say that they would not have any connections in the future. They threw this matter to the back of their minds and forgot about it. Yi Qianqian looked at the string of words she had sent out. Her eyes darkened, and her emotions were complicated. This was the biggest concession she could make. Fang Tongtong, oh, Fang Tongtong, don't force me. However, Fang Tongtong did not seem to give up. She sent another message, Qianqian, I know you're angry at me, but what I said is for your own good. Double scheming whore, you like old Shen so much, and I don't want you two to break up. As long as you apologize, this might be over. Old Shen is so nice to you, he won't hold a grudge against you. The corners of Yi Qianqian's mouth twitched, and her eyes were filled with mockery. Sisai, Shenjilia told you? Double-minded whore, no, that's what I think. Sisai, you like Shenjilia so much. If I break up with Shenjilia, wouldn't that be perfect for you? Double-minded whore, Qianqian, you misunderstood. I don't really like him. Sisai, you told me that yourself, didn't you? You said that you liked Shenjilia very, very much, and that you wanted to be with him. Moreover, the two of you loved each other. Am I dreaming? Weren't you the one who said that? Fang Tongtong seemed to have sunk into silence. She did not reply for a long time. There was a fire burning in Yi Qianqian's heart. The message that Fang Tongtong had sent was literally a plea for peace. Given Yi Qianqian's personality, there was no way she would apologize to anyone when she wasn't in the wrong. Especially Shenjilia, the boyfriend who had cheated on her. Yet, Fang Tongtong said those words so naturally. Her motive was already very clear. This was sowing dissension. If Shenjilia hadn't already found her, Yi Qianqian might have believed him. But now, it was clear that Fang Tongtong had lost the initiative. Double-minded whore, I did say that, but that was just to hide the fact that old Shen was in the hospital. I didn't do it on purpose. Chapter 1776. Scheming whore, Qianqian, why did you say that? You're really disappointing me. Sisai, Yi Qianqian was so angry that she laughed. She couldn't take it anymore and made a call. Fang Tongtong quickly picked up the call. However, the moment she picked up the phone, Yi Qianqian heard sobbing coming from the other end. The words that Yi Qianqian wanted to hurl at Fang Tongtong were stuck in her throat. She couldn't say a single word. Fang Tongtong's sobbing voice could be heard. She choked and shouted, Qianqian, how could you say that to me? No matter what, I can't have anything to do with your boyfriend. Yi Qianqian was speechless. If one were to ask Yi Qianqian what annoyed her the most in her life, it would be this kind of woman who cried like Sister Lin. When Yi Qianqian heard Fang Tongtong's sobs, she lost her temper. She was so frustrated that she wanted to curse. She roared, you, however, she didn't know what to say when the words were on the tip of her tongue. Fang Tongtong's sobs grew louder. She said, I admit that I've been taking care of old Shen for the past few days, but I guarantee that I didn't have any improper thoughts about him. I swear to you. Are you done? Why are you crying? Yi Qianqian was extremely annoyed. Can crying solve the problem? Fang Tongtong wailed and said, Qianqian, no matter what, you have to believe me. I've been taking care of old Shen for the past few days, but I've never thought about stealing your boyfriend. I admit that old Shen is very charming. He's handsome, rich, and he treats his girlfriend extremely well. However, I also know what's mine and what's not. Do you know, Qianqian? I really treat you as my best friend and bestie. This time, if old Shen hadn't stopped me from telling you about us, what happened between me and old Shen would have been an accident. If old Shen hadn't stopped me, I would have said that I've let you down. What? Yi Qianqian felt as if her heart was being squeezed tightly. What did you say happened between you and Shenjilia? What accident? Fang Tongtong's sobs stopped abruptly. It was as if she immediately realized that she had said the wrong thing. Her voice became a little sluggish. What do you mean? Tell me clearly. Yi Qianqian's voice wasn't very calm. What happened between you and old Shen? Accident? However, Fang Tongtong was silent. After a long while, she said, old Shen truly loves you. No matter how much he lied to you, he still loves you. He's just afraid that you'll be sad. Let me ask you, what exactly happened between the two of you? What accident? Yi Qianqian was truly enraged. She raised her voice and slammed the table. She stood up and said, explain yourself. Most of the people in the office had gone out, but there were still many colleagues who brought their own lunch boxes to eat in the company. They were eating when they heard Yi Qianqian's roar. Everyone turned to look at her. Yi Qianqian's eyes were slightly red. It was obvious that she was already furious. Not good, her colleagues looked at each other in dismay. Soon, the chief editor walked out and bellowed, what's the matter, Yi Qianqian? Can't you let us take an afternoon nap? However, Yi Qianqian's attention wasn't on that. She was listening to the voice on the other end of the line. However, Fang Tongtong did not reply. Instead, she heard the busy tone. Chapter 1777. The chief editor had already walked forward. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Yi Qianqian's reddened eyes. Yi Qianqian stared at the call screen on her cell phone. Her eyes welled up with tears. The chief editor did not expect Yi Qianqian to be like this. In the past 3 to 4 years, no one in the office had ever seen Yi Qianqian cry. Yi Qianqian's tears fell, but she quickly wiped them away and said, it's nothing. Sitting down again, the chief editor had already put away her aggressive attitude. She walked up and asked softly, what's wrong? Yi Qianqian tried her best to curl her lips into a smile, but her muscles were too tense. When she smiled, she looked even uglier than when she cried. The chief editor's heart tightened. She handed a tissue to Yi Qianqian and said, don't cry. Don't cry. It would have been better if the chief editor hadn't said anything. As soon as she did, Yi Qianqian felt that everyone around her was looking at her. She pursed her lips and couldn't help but whimper softly. She choked out, it's fine. Go away. It's so embarrassing. The editor-in-chief was almost amused by her, but she felt that it would be too unkind to laugh when someone else was crying. He coughed lightly and said, if that's the case, I'm leaving. Wait a minute. Yi Qianqian whimpered. The chief editor stopped, turned around, and asked, "What's wrong?" "I want to apply for leave." Chief editor, by the time he hailed a cab home, Fong Tongtong had already left. Along the way, Yi Qianqian called Fong Tongtong several times. In the beginning, no one answered. Later on, she couldn't get through. It was obvious that Fong Tongtong had blocked her number. Yi Qianqian sat on the sofa and stared at the ceiling above her. She was in a daze. She sat there and stared at the ceiling above her. After lying in bed for a long time, Yi Qianqian finally remembered to call Shenjilia. It was as if Shenjilia had been waiting for his cell phone. He answered the call immediately. "Hello, Qianqian." It was a familiar voice. It was as pleasant to the ears as before, and it made her emotions fluctuate. But at that moment, when Yi Qianqian heard the voice, she felt her heart tighten. "Shenjilia." Yi Qianqian's throat was a little dry and sounded a little hoarse. When Shenjilia heard that, he felt that something was amiss. He looked at the time. It was 2 p.m. He still had the time to call at this time. He should not be busy, right? "I don't need to work overtime today, right?" "Yeah," Yi Qianqian replied. "Shenjilia." "Yes." "Tell me honestly, what's your relationship with Fong Tongtong?" "I think I made myself very clear this morning. There's nothing between me and Fong Tongtong. The only relationship we have is that I'm your boyfriend, and she's your bestie. However, I feel that your bestie isn't innocent. Can we not contact each other in the future?" Fong Tongtong's eyes widened. "Is that so?" Yi Qianqian was a little confused. "You've been acting weird lately. I didn't mean to hide it from you, Qianqian. I just didn't want you to worry. No, I'm not talking about your hospitalization." In the past, you wouldn't explain so much in one sentence. In the past, you would only tell me that you have nothing to do with her, but now you're telling me not to contact her. What do you mean?" Chapter 1778. Yes, he was not worthy of a deep friendship. Naturally, Yi Qianqian had felt it over the past 2 days. Apart from her disappointment, she also felt very sad. She was 26 years old this year. She had grown up with Fong Tongtong and believed that she had never wronged her in any way. How could Fong Tongtong be so cruel as to do such a thing? If Fong Tongtong hadn't let the cat out of the bag, Yi Qianqian would never have guessed that there was such a relationship between them. But when these words came out of Shenjilia's mouth, it made Yi Qianqian feel extremely sarcastic. Is that so? The reason why Shenjilia felt that they couldn't have a close relationship was probably because he didn't want her to know about the accident between him and Fong Tongtong. Yes. Shenjilia didn't think too much about it. He knew that Yi Qianqian's willingness to call him was a good breakthrough. It was just an accident. Such a small matter would be forgotten in a few days. In the future, they could be together. Shenjilia smiled and asked, "What would you like to eat tonight?" Yi Qianqian felt a sharp pain in her heart. How could he say such a thing? How could he say such words so easily? "Qianqian?" Shenjilia called out again when he didn't hear a reply. Yi Qianqian felt a lump in her throat. After a while, she said, "Shenjilia, do you think we're suitable?" When Shenjilia heard that, he felt that something was amiss. "What do you mean?" "Let's break up." Yi Qianqian's voice was choked with sobs. "That's all. I'll tidy up your things and pack them up. Come and collect them when you have time." "Yi Qianqian, what do you mean by that?" Shenjilia's expression was ugly. "Don't you find it boring to keep saying things like that?" "I'm not joking." Yi Qianqian sounded like she was about to cry. "I can't accept the fact that my man has such an unbreakable relationship with my bestie. Now, I don't want my bestie anymore. I don't want you either." "Qianqian." Shenjilia had just finished the infusion. When he heard this, the veins on the back of his hand bulged, and blood rushed up the tube. However, the phone was quickly hung up. Yi Qianqian's voice was cut off from the other end of the line, leaving behind a heartbreaking busy tone. Shenjilia was about to go crazy. He suddenly threw his phone away, and the dull sound of it was especially loud in the ward. The other patients inside all looked over. They did not know what had happened. It was obvious that Shenjilia had no intention of explaining himself. After he calmed down for a while, his flushed face turned a little pale. Only then did he remove the tube and pick up the phone. The phone was smashed so hard that a spider web appeared on the screen. Clicking on it, the screensaver was a photo of them. They leaned against each other and smiled brightly, like a perfect couple. It was just that the center point of this spider web happened to be right in the middle of them, without any deviation. Shenjilia's heart skipped a beat. He gripped his phone tightly, gritted his teeth, and strode out. Gu Yuanqing was surprised to see Shenjilia striding forward. He shouted, "Brother Shen, didn't you just get in 4? That's it?" However, when she subconsciously looked at the back of his hand, she saw a patch of scarlet. Gu Yuanqing sucked in a breath of air and shouted, "Your hand, Gu Yuanqing." Chapter 1779. Gu Yuanqing hadn't expected Shenjilia to say something like that. He stood rooted to the ground in bewilderment, scratching his head in confusion. She was about to say something when Shenjilia turned and ran. When Gu Yuanqing saw the blood dripping from Shenjilia's body, he was even more confused. He stomped his feet anxiously and wailed, "Who the F***ck did I offend? Hey, wait, your hand has to stop the bleeding first. Qianqian, you got off work long ago." The girl at the front desk of Eurasian Comics looked at Shenjilia. Her eyes were burning with curiosity. "You're Qianqian's boyfriend, aren't you? Io, you're really handsome." Shenjilia acted as if he hadn't heard her teasing. He panted and said, "It's not time to knock off yet." "Why did you knock off so early?" Qianqian was in a bad mood today. I don't know who she was talking to on the phone, but she had an argument. She was so angry that she slammed the table and cried. It's the first time I've seen her cry. Shenjilia was even more baffled when he heard that. Quarrel? He even slammed the table? How angry was Yi Qianqian to slam the table in a place like the office? But if it wasn't with him, then who was it with? The girl at the front desk leaned against the counter and looked at Shenjilia. She asked, "Did Qianqian refuse to answer your calls after you quarreled with her?" He frowned and said, "She's not with me." "Do you know where Qianqian went?" Yi Qianqian looked at Shenjilia. "I don't know. Where else could she go? Kingstown is so big. She could go anywhere. Isn't she at home?" "Yes, home." Shenjilia quickly thanked him and turned to leave. He took a taxi all the way home. When he opened the door, he found that the house was empty. There was no Yi Qianqian or Fang Tongtong. Right. Fang Tongtong? Shenjilia's expression darkened. He flipped through his contact list and found Fang Tongtong's number. He used the landline at home to call her. The phone was turned off. Yi Qianqian's phone had been switched off ever since. Shenjilia looked at the time. It was past 4:00. Shenjilia sat on the sofa in defeat. He was speechless and upset. Annoying, too annoying. Suddenly, Shenjilia looked up and saw a sticky note pasted directly in front of him. There were black words written on it. Shenjilia walked forward and tore the note off. He saw the words written on it, "I've packed your clothes. If you still want the rest of the fitness equipment, you can move it slowly." It was Yi Qianqian's handwriting. Shenjilia turned his head and saw a suitcase behind the sofa. This was the largest suitcase in the house. It was 28 inches long. Shenjilia opened the suitcase. It was indeed filled to the brim. It was all Shenjilia's clothes. Her shoes were packed in a clean box with a plastic bag over them. Her underwear, socks, everything was there. Shenjilia unconsciously clenched his fists, and his teeth chattered. Yi Qianqian was serious this time. She really wanted to chase him away. Fong Tong Tong. It was all because of Fong Tong Tong. Shenjilia closed his eyes and calmed himself down. He sat down and called Yi Qianqian's home in Yuntown. The person who answered the phone was Yi Qianqian's grandfather. The old man seemed to be in a good mood. He said, "Hello, who are you looking for?" He spoke in a dialect, but Shenjilia understood him. He replied in Mandarin, "Hello, Grandpa. Is Uncle Yi there?" Chapter 1780. Grandfather Yi didn't quite understand what he was saying. He mumbled, "Zhenhua, have you paid the water and electricity bills?" Shenjilia didn't understand what Grandfather Yi was saying either. After a while, it was finally Yi Zhenhua who answered the phone. Shenjilia heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Uncle Yi, it's been a while." "I'm Shenjilia." "Oh. Shen, what's up?" Shenjilia would usually call home, but it was mostly to say hello. However, he rarely called in the afternoon. "It's like this, Uncle Yi. Qianqian's friend, Tong Tong, has returned to Yuntown, but her phone seems to be switched off. I wanted to ask you to pay attention. If she returns, please give me a call. Qianqian is worried." Yi Zhenhua didn't suspect anything. He nodded and said, "I thought it was something serious." "Okay, I'll go take a look later. If she returns, I'll ask her to give you a call, okay?" "Okay. Thank you, Uncle." Shenjilia heaved a sigh of relief and began to greet Yi Zhenhua. After asking about the general situation and saying that he would visit often, Shenjilia hung up the phone. The source of this incident was Fong Tong Tong. He had to find out what Fong Tong Tong had said. However, Yi Zhenhua was Qianqian's father. He absolutely couldn't let Yi Zhenhua know that he had quarreled with Qianqian. At this critical juncture, any mistake would be fatal. Shenjilia didn't want to lose, and he couldn't lose. By the time Fong Tong Tong returned to Yuntown, it was already night time. As soon as she got home, she was nagged by her mother. Although Mrs. Fong was nagging, she still doted on her daughter. She said, "Don't play for so long after you're back. By the way, why is your phone switched off?" When Fong Tong Tong heard that, she casually found an excuse and said, "It's out of battery." "Oh, then what were you doing earlier? Didn't you know to charge your phone?" Mrs. Fong rebuked her and waved her hand. "Qianqian can't get through to you. She's anxious now. You should call her now to let her know that you're safe." "How did you know?" Fong Tong Tong looked at her mother. "Will Qianqian still look for me at this time?" "Why wouldn't she? You just came back from Kingstown. Isn't it normal for Qianqian to call to find out if you're safe?" Mrs. Fong sighed and said, "In my opinion, Qianqian is a reliable child. She has been pretty since she was young, has a wild personality, and is very smart. Now, she's a leader in a big company in a big city. She's really amazing. The boyfriend she found is also top-notch. He's handsome and rich. The two daughters of the Yi family are both blessed with good lives." When Fong Tong Tong heard that, she felt upset. She snapped, "If she's that good, why don't you acknowledge her as your daughter?" "I want to." "Who asked you to be so disappointing? You still haven't found a partner for me." "Oh, by the way, did you know that your junior high school classmate, the guy who always said he wanted to marry you, is back?" "Oh, he's so handsome." "You mean Wang Jincheng?" Yes, it's that young man. I heard that he worked in a farm after graduating from university. Now he plans to come back and work on his own. He came back with his father. It's just that his father's brain hasn't been working well for the past 2 years. How could this be? What's wrong with his brain?" Chapter 1781. Pfft. Fong Tongtong choked. No way. Did he go out and mess around? Well, he raped that woman. She's already in her 40s or 50s, and her son is already in college. Now that something like this happened, he's going to lose all his dignity. Mrs. Fong was a little sympathetic. But Wang Jincheng is a pretty good guy. He's young and promising. His father's health is getting worse, and he doesn't have many years left. Hey. What do you mean? Fong Tongtong felt goosebumps all over her body. Are you planning to arrange a blind date with this guy? Why not? But he just came back not long ago, and I haven't had the time to visit him. It would be awkward if he's not single. If he's single, since he used to like you, you can ask him out to meet you. You already know him, and there's some foundation. It's different from other blind dates. Fong Tongtong was speechless and said in annoyance, Are you that worried that your daughter won't be able to get married? That's right. I used to think that Yi Qianqian would never be able to find a boyfriend because she was even more unruly than you. In the end, she's grown up and found a boyfriend who's so handsome and outstanding. Look. Can you do it? So what if he's outstanding? They still broke up. Fong Tongtong sat on the chair and lowered her head to turn on her phone. Mrs. Fong was shocked when she heard that. They broke up. How is that possible? Doesn't that guy like Qianqian very much? How could they break up? Can't Yi Qianqian dump him herself? Fong Tongtong said in annoyance. Besides, it's up to you. A mother wants to get married, and a man wants to cheat. No one can stop him. That can't be. That guy looks like a decent man. How could he cheat? Why not? Yi Qianqian is so boorish and doesn't act like a girl at all. Why would a man covet her? It's only right that they broke up. Shoo. Qianqian is a good person. She looks fierce, but she's just a paper tiger. It's not like you don't know her. How could she be cheated on? Mrs. Fong clapped her hands. No, you have to scold that guy. Hey. Why are you so agitated? How can you not be excited? Qianqian is such a good girl. Aren't you worried that she has cheated on you? Fong Tongtong was speechless. Forget it. I was just joking. Look at how nervous you are. You treat her like your daughter, but she chased your daughter out of her house. Do you know that? Really? Of course it's true. Why else would I come back? Fong Tongtong looked aggrieved. Forget it. You don't believe me anyway. If you believe Yi Qianqian, you can treat her like your daughter. As she spoke, she stood up and prepared to leave. Madame Fong said anxiously, What? Did her boyfriend cheat on her and take it out on you? It's normal for him to be in a bad mood. Just give way and he'll be fine. Fong Tongtong felt even more aggrieved. She looked like she was on the verge of tears as she choked out, You don't know anything at all. She chased me away because she thought I seduced her boyfriend. Mrs. Fong turned pale with fright. How is that possible? My daughter isn't that kind of person at all. Did Yi Qianqian really say that? Chapter 1782. Mrs. Fong's expression darkened when she heard that. What do you mean? Tell me everything. Fong Tongtong wiped her tears. Forget it. You don't believe me anyway. You've always liked Yi Qianqian. What nonsense are you talking about? You're my daughter. Tell me. Fong Tongtong sobbed as she recounted the incident. Old Shen is a doctor. You know that the doctor-patient relationship has been tense over the years. She changed a few small details, but the general content was still the same. However, Fong Tongtong automatically ignored the words she said to Yi Qianqian that night, as well as the last phone call with Yi Qianqian. That's it. After Yi Qianqian slapped Old Shen, she left. Old Shen's wound recovered, but what does that have to do with me? I didn't do anything. Moreover, old Shen treats me well. How can I betray him? That's right. Yi Qianqian is becoming more and more outrageous. Mom, I still have the chat records here. Look at Yi Qianqian's attitude toward me. Is this the attitude she would have toward a friend? To think that I treated her as my best friend. I'm so angry. Fong Tongtong picked up the phone and handed it to her mother. However, what Mrs. Fong didn't know was that the chat records were not complete. Fong Tongtong cleverly deleted a few sentences, making it seem as if Yi Qianqian was being aggressive. Mrs. Fong was furious. That's too much. Then why did she call you? I didn't think much of it when her father told me, but now it seems that Yi Qianqian wants to settle the score with you. That's why I didn't dare to turn my phone on. Mom, sob. I feel so wronged. I really treated Yi Qianqian as a good friend, but I didn't expect her to treat me like this. She indiscriminately slandered me and even slandered her boyfriend. Don't cry. Mom will avenge you. If Mrs. Fong could raise Fong Tongtong to such a character, she must be very capable herself. She rolled up her sleeves and took the phone from Fong Tongtong. When she opened the call records, she saw a few more missed calls. Old Shen. Old Shen called you. Mrs. Fong was a little surprised. Isn't Yi Qianqian looking for you? Why is Old Shen calling you? Fong Tongtong immediately took her phone back and saw a missed call from Old Shen. Fong Tongtong's heart leaped with joy. She subconsciously lifted the corners of her lips and called back. Seeing this, Mrs. Fong frowned. Do you like this young man? Fong Tongtong was shocked and took a step back. Mom, is that why Qianqian feels that you've wronged her? Mrs. Fong's words were sharp, and Fong Tongtong's heart raced. Fortunately, the call went through quickly, and Shenjilia quickly picked up. Hello, Old Shen. Fong Tongtong. Shenjilia's tone was a little harsh. What exactly did you say to Qianqian? Me? I didn't say anything to Qianqian. Even if I want to say something, Qianqian has to believe me. Besides, that's the truth. What else can I say? Fong Tongtong sounded aggrieved. She subconsciously glanced at her mother and mumbled, I just let it slip. That night, which night? Shenjilia sensed that something was amiss. Who had that night with you? Explain yourself. Chapter 1783. It was that night. Didn't Qianqian run out? Then. Fong Tongtong gave a vague explanation. Mom, don't be here. Mrs. Fong was enraged when she heard that. Yi Qianqian ran out, and then the two of you hooked up. Tell me. Mrs. Fong's voice wasn't soft, and Fong Tongtong was nervous when she heard it. She immediately hung up the phone and said, Mom, there's nothing like that. Don't overthink it. Nothing? Mrs. Fong stared at Fong Tongtong's phone. Why did you hang up the phone if you didn't? You asked this man to tell me. What's the meaning of this? You're two-timing, aren't you? No. Fong Tongtong was about to explain when her phone rang again. When she saw Old Shen's name on the screen, Fong Tongtong covered her phone and said, Mom, it's none of your business. Go back to your work. No way. However, Fong Tongtong ran out with her phone in her hand. In a few moments, she was out of sight. Mrs. Fong stomped her feet in anger. Since she couldn't catch up to Yi Qianqian, she turned around and picked up the landline to call Yi Qianqian. After Fong Tongtong confirmed that her mother hadn't caught up to her, she heaved a sigh of relief. She answered the phone. Hello. What did you mean by that? It's about that day. After Yi Qianqian ran out, didn't you go home to bandage up your wound? I went back to Yi Qianqian's house. You didn't come back, and neither did Qianqian. That night, I called someone and accidentally let it slip. I said that the two of you might break up. If you didn't say it first, then Yi Qianqian would. After all, you're a man, and you've been slapped in public. No one can stand it, right? Fong Tong Tong, you're the most disgusting and troublesome person I've ever met. Shenjilia was so angry that he didn't bother to hide his anger. What happens between me and Yi Qianqian has nothing to do with you. Today, I'll make things clear with you. Regardless of whether or not Yi Qianqian and I end up together, right now, at this very moment, I really love Yi Qianqian. Even if Yi Qianqian wanted my life right now, I wouldn't have anything to say. As for you, before this incident, I treated you as Yi Qianqian's best friend. Now, I only treat you as a wishful-thinking mistress who only knows how to use underhanded means to destroy other people's relationships. Every word was enunciated clearly. Shenjilia's tone was harsh, but every word was deadly. Fong Tong Tong gripped her phone tighter and tighter as she gritted her teeth. However, his eyes had already turned red. She stared at the coarse wall in front of her and took a deep breath. She opened her mouth to speak, but tears were already flowing from her eyes. Shenjilia. You'll regret this. Fong Tong Tong was on the verge of crying out loud. However, she managed to suppress the urge with her rationality. Shenjilia naturally knew how much damage his words would cause to a girl. The guilt in his heart grew. However, if he didn't say those words now, Fong Tong Tong wouldn't be the only one who would be hurt in the future. There would be him and Yi Qianqian as well. Shenjilia's gaze deepened as he coldly said, "That's not up to you to decide. Yi Qianqian is really unlucky to have a best friend like you. Don't contact Qianqian in the future. I won't send you an invitation when we get married. You're on your own now." Chapter 1784. When she heard the busy tone from the other end of the phone, Fong Tong Tong suddenly felt as though all the energy in her body had been sucked out. His grip loosened, and the phone fell to the ground. The ground was made of hard cement. Just by listening to the sound, one could tell that it was a tragic end. Fong Tong Tong stared at the ground. She squatted down and picked up her phone. She blinked her eyes hard, and tears immediately formed in her already dry eyes. With reddened eyes, she slowly lowered her head and walked in. Mrs. Fong was on the phone, and it sounded like she was quarreling. "What do you mean? Isn't Tong Tong good to you? Now that something like this happened between your boyfriend and her, if it weren't for you, would my daughter have lost her innocence? Now you're trying to shirk responsibility by saying that you don't know? I'm telling you, it's impossible." Fong Tong Tong was in a daze when she heard her mother's words. Did she misunderstand something? What innocence? What did she mean by that? Why did it sound like Shenjilia had done something indescribable with her? When Mrs. Fong heard the voice coming from behind her, she immediately turned around and looked at her daughter. She waved at her and said, "To think that you treated her as a good friend. What does Yi Qianqian mean by this? Come here." As Mrs. Fong spoke, she had already turned on the speaker. Fong Tong Tong was silent for a moment before she called out, "Qianqian." Fong Tong Tong. Yi Qianqian sounded a little tired. "Can't you be more shameless? You weren't like this in the past." Yi Qianqian's tone wasn't harsh, but the contempt in it was unbearable. Fong Tong Tong was about to say something, but Yi Qianqian had already hung up. Mrs. Fong was furious when she heard that and roared, "What's the meaning of this? Tong Tong, what does this woman mean?" It wasn't just Mrs. Fong. Fong Tong Tong was also fuming with rage. The faint sense of guilt in his heart had completely vanished. "If you are heartless, I will be unjust. Since you guys are going to break up, why don't you break up completely?" Yi Qianqian felt that the events of the past few days had tormented her unbearably. The most disgusting thing was that she even felt disgusted by her own home. That night, if the two of them really had that night, it must have been in her little nest. However, he didn't know which bed it was. "How disgusting," Yi Qianqian muttered and closed her eyes tightly. Just then, his phone rang. It was Shenjilia. Yi Qianqian only glanced at it before turning the phone to silent mode and putting it aside. Yi Yuyu had just come downstairs when she saw Yi Qianqian's extremely troubled expression. She sat down beside her. Yi Qianqian glanced at Yi Yuyu before her eyes landed on her stomach. Time really flies. Did you blow air into your stomach? How did it get bigger so quickly? Go, it's a real baby inside. Feel it. Yi Yuyu grabbed her hand and gently stroked her belly. The child isn't big now. In a little more than a month, it should start moving. So fast. Yes, the child can be born after more than 9 months of pregnancy. At that time, don't let her see Aunt's sad face. When she heard that, the corners of her mouth twitched and she replied, I've just fallen out of love. Can't you forgive me a little? Chapter 1785. As far as he could remember, Yi Qianqian was always noisy and cheerful. She had always been optimistic. Yi Yuyu rarely saw Yi Qianqian so troubled. Yi Qianqian shook her head without hesitation. No. I don't want to see him. Why? If there's something, it's better to talk it out. The most important thing for a husband and wife is to be honest. No matter what kind of misunderstanding you have, it'll be fine as long as you talk it out, Yi Yuyu said softly as she caressed her stomach. Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Yuyu and felt a little envious. Yi Yuyu was a woman who was as gentle as water. She spoke softly, was meticulous, understanding, and patient. Any man would like a woman like Yi Yuyu, right? As for his temper, it was really terrible. Thinking of that, Yi Qianqian felt even worse. She said, Yuyu, we're not married. We're not husband and wife. We just broke up. You like him very much. You can lie to me about that, but you can't lie to yourself. Yi Yuyu held her hand. I always thought that it was only a matter of time before the two of you got married. No, Yuyu, you don't know him at all. Do you know Fang Tongtong? Of course I know her. She was my bridesmaid at my wedding. What about it? Yi Yuyu looked at Yi Qianqian. She's been staying at your place for the past few days, right? Does this matter have anything to do with her? Do you think I really like Shenjilia, Yuyu? Yi Yuyu didn't know why Yi Qianqian suddenly changed the topic. After thinking about it, she said, well, perhaps it's already beyond liking. You love him very much, sister. Is that so? I thought so a few days ago, but I don't think so anymore. Huh? If you love someone, shouldn't you tolerate everything about them? In the past, I thought I loved Fang Tongtong. Later, I thought I loved Shenjilia, but when I found out that the two of them had sex, I didn't love anyone anymore. Yi Yuyu didn't expect to hear that. She couldn't help but widen her eyes and gasp. No way, the two of them had sex. Yi Qianqian had expected such a reaction from Yi Yuyu. She laughed bitterly and said, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I think so too. That's impossible. If Shenjilia really got together with Fang Tongtong, based on my understanding of him, he would definitely break up with you. It's impossible for him to keep calling you and begging you to change your mind like he is doing now. Fang Tongtong said it was an accident. Yi Yuyu was speechless. Indeed. If Shenjilia had fallen in love with someone else, he would have broken up with Yi Qianqian. However, if it was just an accident, and the person Shenjilia liked and loved was still Yi Qianqian, then it was understandable that things would turn out like this. This is outrageous. Yi Yuyu was infuriated. To think that you treated them so well. Is this how they repay you? Yi Qianqian was already in a terrible mood. When she heard that, she felt the urge to cry. I'll call him and ask. She picked up the phone and dialed Shenjilia's number. Yi Qianqian laughed bitterly. Do you think it's possible for him to admit it? Yes, it's impossible, Yi Yuyu frowned and said, perhaps it's a misunderstanding. Chapter 1786. You believe what Fang Tongtong says? Yi Yuyu was exasperated. What if she just wants you to break up? What if she's up to no good? What if she's already taken a liking to Shinjilia and wants to poach you and become your mistress? It wasn't that Yi Qianqian hadn't considered these questions before. Meeting Yi Yuyu's gaze, Yi Qianqian said, Fang Tongtong has never had a boyfriend. How could she blabber about something like that? Shinjilia is my boyfriend. Everyone knows that. If she's really trying to ruin our relationship, how bad would her reputation be if word got out? But I don't think it's possible. Shinjilia isn't stupid. Since he loves you, he wouldn't be entangled with another woman. Yi Yuyu defended Shinjilia. I've known Shinjilia for almost 20 years. I think I have some understanding of him. But he lied to me. Yi Qianqian's eyes reddened as she revealed the truth. From the time Shinjilia hid his injury from her to the time she exposed his lie, to the time Fang Tongtong let slip, Yi Yuyu explained everything clearly, no matter how big or small it was. The details were very detailed. Yi Yuyu was so stunned by what she heard that she had nothing to say. There were suspicious points everywhere. There were loopholes everywhere. With so many things Shinjilia had done, it was difficult to convince others that he was innocent. Yi Yuyu remained silent. When she saw Yi Qianqian's reddened eyes, she said, I think we should give him a chance to explain himself. There's no need, Yi Qianqian interrupted her. Fortunately, we're not married yet. If we break up now, we might as well. Who knows, this might be a good start. Yi Yuyu was indignant. You're just going to let it go like that? What else can I do? Of course not. Which man doesn't have a few ex-girlfriends outside? Can't you just treat it as if he's had an ex-girlfriend before? But Fang Tongtong is my best friend since I was young. She's a good friend of mine. Even a rabbit doesn't eat the grass near its nest. What does this mean? Furthermore, Fang Tongtong's mother called me just now. She scolded me for ruining her daughter and bringing her to the front of a beast. Yi Qianqian almost burst into tears. She almost couldn't hold it in. Yi Yuyu panicked and quickly pulled her into her arms. Don't cry. Don't cry. Yi Qianqian wasn't the kind of person who would cry at the drop of a hat. She wiped her eyes and sniffled before saying, if Fang Tongtong's mother finds out about this, it's equivalent to the entire town knowing about it. You know how the mouths of women in small towns can be. Dad is an electrician. Everyone in the town knows him. Plus, the news of your grand marriage has probably spread all over the world. Now that something like this has happened, I'm really afraid that if I go back to the town, I'll be criticized by the people in the town. Yi Yuyu hit her. You're the mistress. You're the victim. Why are you acting as though you owe them something? Don't let me down. Yuyu, what will I do in the future? Chapter 1787. There will be retribution. Those words kept echoing in Yi Qianqian's mind. After dinner, Yi Qianqian slept at Yi Yuyu's side. Yi Qianqian was Yi Yuyu's biological sister, so she didn't shy away and stayed in the guest room. Although Li Jinnan was busy with work, he often went home. When he saw Yi Qianqian, he would say a few words to her from a distance. However, he was her sister's husband. When Yi Qianqian thought of Fang Tongtong, she didn't dare to get close to Li Jinnan. Days like that passed for 3 days in a row. For the past few days, Yi Qianqian went to the office at 7 in the morning and got off work at 9 in the evening. She specially instructed the receptionist to tell Shinjilia that she had applied for leave or resigned if he came looking for her. The chief editor was very pleased and even praised Yi Qianqian during the meeting. She was given the title of Best Employee and wasn't deducted from the full attendance award. In just a few days, everyone knew that Yi Qianqian had fallen out of love. The originally lazy performance queen suddenly became a hard-working person who went out early and came back late. It was precisely because of this that Yi Qianqian's performance had achieved results that amazed everyone in just a few days at the end of the month. 3 days was neither a long nor short time. Yi Qianqian didn't dare to stop. She was busy every day, afraid that if she stopped, she would think of Shenjilia, Fang Tongtong, and their affair. As for herself, she could only stay at her sister's house and seek comfort. However, she didn't expect that even though Yi Qianqian avoided Shenjilia so much, she would still be stopped at the entrance of the office. It was already 10 o'clock when she got off work. Yi Qianqian carried her bag and walked downstairs. She was about to hail a cab when she suddenly felt a grip on her arm. Yi Qianqian jumped in fright. She screamed and jumped back. "It's me." Shenjilia's voice rang out, and Yi Qianqian calmed down. However, her heart felt as if it was being pricked by needles. They hadn't seen each other for a few days, but Shenjilia looked very tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his cheeks were a little thin. Yi Qianqian glanced at her hand that was being held and frowned in resistance. She twisted it and said in disgust, "What do you want?" "I just want to tell you that I'm moving away. I won't bother you anymore." Shenjilia loosened his grip. "I've finished moving everything. I've also added a fish tank." "Haven't you always wanted a fish tank?" "I've reared your favorite tropical fish in it. You can go back and stay there for the rest of the day." Yi Qianqian felt as if her chest had been hammered by a hammer. Yi Qianqian felt a little suffocated. "That's your house. It's your home. I'm just lodging here. Don't mess up your priorities." Shenjilia smiled. "In the future, take good care of yourself." Yi Qianqian pursed her lips tightly, and her eyes suddenly became hot. She lowered her head, not daring to look at him. "But, Qianqian, I've never done anything to let you down. I've done it before, I'm doing it now, and I'll be doing it in the future." Shenjilia gazed deeply into her eyes. "I'll wait for you to come back." Yi Qianqian gripped the strap of her bag tighter and tighter. That was what she wanted, wasn't it? But why did she feel so sad when Shenjilia said those words? Hadn't she been hiding and running away for so long because she was afraid that he would pester her? Now that he had decided to move away, she felt empty in her heart. Chapter 1788. It had only been a few days since he last saw her, but Shenjilia could clearly feel that she had lost a lot of weight. Her complexion wasn't very good either. Her petite and exquisite body seemed even more frail than before. It was autumn, and it was getting colder. Yi Qianqian was wearing a beige sleeveless short skirt that he had never seen before. It looked very thin. In the past, Shenjilia would have carried her over and scolded her while warming her up. Then, he would have carried her home and tucked her into bed. But, he couldn't do that anymore. Shenjilia stretched out his hand, but in the end, he didn't reach it. Yi Qianqian forced herself to calm down. She looked up and forced a smile. "Thank you. Goodbye." She turned around, and suddenly, a cold wind blew over. It made Yi Qianqian's body tremble. Shenjilia's throat became more and more uncomfortable. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by a hand. He wanted to go forward, but his rationality stopped him. In the end, he couldn't help but call out, "Qianqian." Yi Qianqian stopped in her tracks and straightened her body. She didn't look back and forced herself to be calm. "What's the matter?" "I really love you." Shenjilia's voice was a little low. Yi Qianqian's ears felt the cold wind, but his faint words fell clearly into her ears. A cold arrow pierced through the heart. It was fatal and chilling. Yi Qianqian straightened her back and strode forward. A taxi came from the opposite direction. Yi Qianqian stopped it and got in. She didn't dare to look back at him again. Some people and some things, once left behind, would be inextricably entangled in a frenzy. So be it. Once was enough for a bloody betrayal. When she returned home, Yi Qianqian opened the door and saw a beautiful bathtub. It was rectangular and lit with beautiful incandescent lights. There were tropical fish the size of 2 fingers swimming in it. The green kelp slowly floated with the waves, and the dark red coral opened and closed. It was beautiful. Everything was how she had imagined it to be. But her heart felt as if it had been stabbed several times. Tears flowed uncontrollably. I really love you. F***ck your true love. I don't care. Yi Qianqian squatted down, curled up on the ground, and burst into tears. She didn't know how much time had passed before she finally got up. She wiped away her tears, took a shower, and lay down on the bed. Go to sleep. When he woke up, tomorrow was a new day. In the morning, Yi Qianqian was woken up by a phone call. It was the landline at home. Yi Qianqian got up and lazily picked up the phone in her slippers. Hello? Qianqian, are you awake? It was Yi Zhenhua. I just woke up. Today is the weekend, so I plan to sleep a little longer. Oh. By the way, do you know about Fang Tongtong's return to Yuntown? When she heard Fang Tongtong's name, Yi Qianqian's drowsiness disappeared. She focused her gaze and calmly replied, yeah. I heard that you broke up with Shen. How did you know? Looks like it's true. Yi Zhenhua sighed. I didn't expect little Shen to be such an honest person. I didn't expect him to be such a person behind the scenes. No matter what, Tong Tong is your friend. Great, now she's even your friend. Yi Qianqian was silent. After a while, she asked, Dad, what do you know? What do I know? It's almost spread throughout the town. They're saying that your boyfriend raped Fang Tongtong and ruined her chastity. How could he do such a thing? Yi Qianqian widened her eyes when she heard that. Wan Lily, your man cheated. What are you going to do? Chapter 1789. What do I know? It's almost spread throughout the town. They're saying that your boyfriend raped Fang Tongtong and ruined her chastity. How could he do such a thing? Yi Qianqian's eyes widened when she heard that. What? Yi Qianqian couldn't believe it. Old Shen raped Fang Tongtong? Pfft. How is that possible? Yi Zhenhua clapped his hands when he heard that. That's right. How is that possible? Shen is a very upright person. How could he do such a thing? Exactly. Yi Qianqian held her forehead. She was both angry and amused. At the same time, she was filled with anger. Who said that? F***ck. Today, I finally know what it means to spread falsehoods. Not only that, but they also said that you're a bad person. They said that you brought Fang Tongtong into the tiger's den, causing her to lose her chastity and chastity. You even stirred up a lot of unhappiness. Now she's staying at home. Her mother talks to everyone she sees. She scolds you very harshly. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I argued with her once. Yi Zhenhua's voice grew angrier as he spoke. How can there be such a person in this world? I used to think that their family was pretty good, but now it's like this. Why doesn't she say that her daughter seduced my future son-in-law? It takes 2 hands to clap. If Fang Tongtong wasn't willing to be with him, Shen wouldn't have been able to do anything to her. Yi Qianqian laughed bitterly when she heard that. Yi Zhenhua sighed. Qianqian, no matter what, you can't be with him anymore after what happened. This kind of man is fickle. Today it's Tong Tong, but tomorrow it might be someone else. It's better to break up. Dad, I know what I'm doing. It's just a pity. Shen is a good kid. He's good-looking, hard-working, eloquent, and well-educated. I don't believe that Shen would do something like this. Yi Qianqian was silent. I think it's unbelievable too. Hey, if you don't have anything going on this weekend, go home. Your grandfather isn't in good health. Recently, he's been on an 4 drip. I didn't tell you because you're busy with work. Yi Zhenhua's voice was slow and gentle. Grandfather might be here in the next 2 days. Come back to see him. He misses you very much. Yi Qianqian's eyes reddened, and she nodded. Yeah. Ever since Grandma passed away, Grandpa's health had not been very good. 2 years of dementia had been torturous. Yi Qianqian was already aware of the old man's condition. However, if he were to return at this critical juncture, it would be hard to avoid some gossip. After some thought, Yi Qianqian gave Yi Yuyu a call. Over the past few days, Fang Tongtong had become the talk of the town. In the past, the people that the townspeople talked about the most were those with bright futures. This was the first time that everyone was talking about him. Fang Tongtong felt that she was extremely shameless. She had used her mother's mouth to vilify Yi Qianqian for the past few days. By now, almost everyone in town knew that Yi Qianqian had betrayed her friend for the sake of glory. In order to break up, she had pushed Yi Qianqian to Shenjilia and then dumped her man. It was also the first time Fang Tongtong realized how terrifying the term, spreading rumors, could be. Verbal violence was far more unbearable than a direct physical attack. Chapter 1790. When Fang Tongtong heard her mother's words, she was stunned. She looked at her mother in disbelief and asked, why did she come back? Isn't she waiting to be criticized for coming back at this time? At the same time, Fang Tongtong thought of another possibility. Could it be that Yi Qianqian came back to settle scores with me? *T. Anger flashed across Lady Fang's face as she said, she even wants to settle accounts with you. You should be thankful that I didn't settle accounts with her. If she hadn't taken you to her house to live, would such a thing have happened? That girl is really despicable. Mom. Fang Tongtong felt a little embarrassed. You clearly knew that wasn't the case. Now that you've said that, everyone is talking about us. If that's the case, won't everyone think that I've been fooled? Are you still my mom? Fang Tongtong felt a little embarrassed. What do you know? Mrs. Fang reached out and pointed a finger at Fang Tongtong's head. She sounded a little exasperated at Fang Tongtong's failure to live up to her expectations. If I didn't say that, would this matter have blown up? Don't you like that guy? If this matter didn't blow up, would you still be with him? Would he have broken up with Yi Qianqian? But even if you blew things up to this point, my reputation will still be in tatters. The more Fang Tongtong thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. She scolded, why do I have a mother like you? Do you know that people are pointing fingers at me the moment I step out of the house? Even if this matter wasn't true, it has become true. Silly girl, Mom is doing this for your own good. Did Yi Qianqian break up with that man? Fang Tongtong nodded her head. Her eyes were slightly red. That's right. Call that man and ask him. Now that everyone knows about the two of you, see what he wants to do. When Fang Tongtong heard that, she pursed her lips. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she still nodded her head. It was early autumn. It was drizzling, and the wind was strong. It made people feel tired and bleak. It was rare for Yi Qianqian to come home and see so many people in the yard. It was very lively. Yi Yuyu and Li Jinnan followed behind Yi Qianqian. They walked in quietly, leaning against each other. The people who came and went were all relatives she hadn't seen in a long time. When they saw Yi Qianqian, some of them whispered to each other, while others merely nodded and smiled before walking past her. Yi Qianqian knew that the only reason they were paying attention to her was because of the recent rumors. Moreover, it was a rumor that was bad for him. Yi Qianqian turned a blind eye to it. She walked straight into her grandfather's room. His father was looking at his grandfather. The old man was lying on the bed. His hair was snow-white, and his eyes were deeply sunken. He looked a little scary. But his eyes were still kind. When he saw Yi Qianqian come in, he called out in a hoarse voice, Qianqian. Yi Qianqian's eyes reddened. She stepped forward and took the old man's withered hand from Yi Zhenhua's and called out, "Grandpa." Yi Yuyu followed behind and walked forward as well. She didn't have any feelings for this old man, but at this time, she still felt a little sad. When the old man saw Yi Yuyu, he tried his best to smile and called out, "Yuyu." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Grandpa still remembers me." Chapter 1791. Li Jinan walked forward and looked at the old man as he gently squatted down. "Grandpa, I'm Xiao Nan. I'm Yuyu's husband, your grandson-in-law. Don't worry. I'll treat Dad and Yuyu well." It was simple, but sincere and powerful. He didn't know how to speak the dialect of Yuntown, and he didn't know if Yi Zhenhua could understand him, but every word he said was sincere. Yi Zhenhua translated for Grandpa. Grandpa nodded his head with a smile. The old man looked very spirited. His cloudy eyes reflected the vicissitudes of life and experience that were different from those of an ordinary person. He looked at Yi Qianqian and patted her hand as he said, "Qianqian, you're a sensible child. Don't care what outsiders say. You're my good granddaughter." Yi Qianqian was stunned when she heard that. She couldn't hold back her tears any longer. "Grandpa. Grandpa is most worried about you. You're an impulsive child who refuses to submit to others, and your mouth is unforgiving. There are many things in this world that we mortals can't predict. You have to learn to avoid them. You're a good child, but your personality is just like your father's. You can't be like this, you have to change in the future, understand?" Yi Qianqian nodded her head. "I understand, Grandpa." At the same time, she felt that it was a little strange. Grandpa's dementia over the years had made it difficult for him to recognize people. He was even a little muddle-headed. However, it was rare to see someone so spirited and articulate like this. "Zhenhua." Grandpa's voice was still very spirited. He looked at Yi Zhenhua and said, "I've lived for so long, and the person I'm most worried about is Qianqian. It's my regret that I didn't get to see her get married. Zhenhua, you must marry her off in style." "Dad, don't worry. All right, your mother is waiting for me. I'll make a move first." When the old man said that, he looked at the top of the bed with a smile on his face. "Don't cry after I leave. I'm with your grandmother again." When those words were said, it made them want to cry even more. At the same time, they couldn't help but look up at the top of the bed. There was nothing up there. But the old man's eyes were filled with extreme affection. Soon, the old man closed his eyes. He left. The old man had lived a peaceful life. He was upright and friendly. He loved his wife dearly, even more so. Now, the old couple could finally reunite. However, the room was filled with cries of grief. The news of the old man's death spread very quickly in town. Yi Qianqian's grandfather was very prestigious in town. Coupled with Yi Zhenhua's fame, it didn't take long for the news to spread. There was a big banyan tree at the most densely populated part of the town. There was a small shop under the big banyan tree. When Fang Tongtong heard the passers-by talking about it, she was amazed. Before Yi Qianqian returned, there had been no news of the old man. Yi Qianqian had just returned when she heard someone mention that old Master Shen had left. Was old Master Shen specifically waiting for Yi Qianqian? At this moment, Mrs. Fang rushed back from outside. After she entered, she told Fang Tongtong, "You'll look for Yi Qianqian later." Fang Tongtong was baffled and asked, "Why would I look for her?" You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.